Hey, Dwight. Rerun?
Yeah, what's happening?
Well, is the strike over?
No, those cameramen voted to stay out on strike, and all us pages voted not to cross the picket line.
Well, good for you, Rerun. Now, what can I get you?
Well, how's the chili, Shirley?
Very healthy. Yes, just running all around the kitchen.
I'm not in the mood for jokes, Shirley. How much is it?
25 cents.
I'll have a large bowl.
Large bowl, huh? Mm-hmm. Look, Rerun, I don't try and tell people how to live, you know? But I don't mind telling you, that's a bad way to die.
Have something else, Rerun.
I can't. All I have is 25 cents. That dumb strike has been going on for 5 weeks now, and I'm broke, and I'm sick of it. I'm mad as hell, and I'm not going to take it anymore.
Rerun, control yourself.
I can't control myself. I'm too hungry. I'm too weak. I'm starving.
What are you gonna do?
Faint.
2 hamburgers, Shirley. My treat, Rerun.
Okay, 2 hamburgers coming up.
Thanks, Dwayne. You should get something for yourself, too, buddy. That's the last meal I'll have today. Raj, we're practically out of food at home.
Rerun, we're practically out of home, too. And if we don't start bringing in some money, Mrs. Watson's gonna throw us out of our apartment.
What? Raj, I thought you paid Mrs. Watson for the rent this month.
Rerun, we didn't pay her the rent this month, and we don't have the money for next month. If we don't be careful, she's gonna throw us out on the street.
Does that mean you might have to move back into the house?
I might have to.
In that case, I'll loan you the money for the rent.
Thanks, Dee.
At 10% interest.
What are you cooking?
Well, just a second, Raj. It needs a little ketchup. A little ketchup. Right on. And a pinch of salt. Pinch of salt. There we go. Pinch of salt. And a sprinkle of pepper. Just a teeny sprinkle. Shut up. Perfect.
What is it?
Ketchup, salt, and pepper soup.
Yeah. Throw it out. I'll get it.
Right on.
How's it going, Stretch?
Hey, Detective Barnett.
Yo, short stuff.
Hey, how's it going, big girl?
Are you guys making something with ketchup?
Yep.
What?
Ketchup, salt, and pepper soup.
Yeah. Throw it out.
Fellas, listen, I'm on a spot, and I was wondering if you could help me out. I have to get across town right away. I was wondering if you'd mind watching Little Earl for me.
Hey, no problem.
You mean police business, big girl?
Yeah. We were just getting ready to go to the ball game when I got the call.
Sometimes I really hate crime.
Yeah, son. That's why we've got to fight it with everything we have. And that's why I have to get over to the Vinewood supermarket. I've been after this guy for a year, and the SWAT team has him trapped over there.
Oh, wow. That is important. But maybe you'll have time to take Little Earl to the ball game afterwards.
I don't think so. You see, this fella's armed, and he could hold out in the supermarket forever. I mean, there's plenty of food there. He could eat the canned vegetables for years.
That's right.
The frozen meats for a year.
Oh, yeah.
The pastry for months.
Sure.
And the ice cream for days. But we'll get him.
No, leave him alone. You guys even got to the Twinkies.
Later. Be good, Little Earl.
Okay.
Bye, Dad.
Bye. Well, now, Little Earl, have a seat, my friend. Hey, you want to watch TV?
Sure. How's your sister, Raj?
She's fine.
Does she ever ask for me?
Yeah, every now and then.
Give her my love, will ya? I'm nuts about the kid.
Little Earl,
What?
that candy bar is bad for your teeth, man. And as long as we're in charge of you, I can't let you have it. Now give it to me, I'll throw it away. Give it here.
Rerun. This is my candy.
Teeth. Give it up.
Hey.
Man, I'm surprised at you.
Thanks, Rerun. My teeth feel better already.
I'm good. Oh, hi, Mrs. Watson.
Oh, Mrs. Watson, if you come about the rent.
Well, first of all, I thought you might enjoy some finger sandwiches.
Oh, finger sandwiches, how nice. I'll just take a thumb.
Roger, I would like to talk to you about the rent.
Rent. Little Earl, I just got a great idea, man. Why don't we go upstairs and watch TV in your apartment? I'm sure you'd be more comfortable.
No, I wouldn't.
Yes, you would. Follow me.
Rerun.
For the child, Raj.
Right, sure. Mm-hmm. Well, I'll take this for you. Have a seat, Mrs. Watson.
Thank you.
You know, I'm really sorry about the rent. I know it's late, but I really don't know what to say.
You don't have to say anything. I totally understand the situation, and I don't want you to worry about it. When the strike is over, Rerun will have the money, and you can pay me then.
Mrs. Watson,
May. May. That's my first name. Please call me May, okay?
May, okay. Okay, May.
Okay.
May, okay.
Right.
May, you know, you do know the strike may go on, you know, and Rerun refuses to cross the picket line.
My, what a fine young man. My late husband, Ralph, was like that. He was a very strong union man.
Oh, how long has he been,
My husband's been dead 3 years, Roger. He was a newspaperman.
Oh, really? You know, I work for a newspaper part-time.
Yes, Roger, I know. You told me. You know, you remind me of him an awful lot.
Really?
Yes, you have the same energy, the charm. You know, you even look like him.
Oh, thank you. That's nice of you.
Except for the eyeglasses.
Oh, well, they're only for seeing, you know.
Well, they're very becoming.
Thank you. That's very nice.
It's just a fact.
Oh, that is nice of me.
Yeah. Oh, Roger, I have a gift for you.
A present for me?
Yes.
Oh, a pipe.
Yeah. It was for him. I never got a chance to give it to him.
Oh, well, I really can't accept this.
Nonsense. You're the perfect person to have it. Please take it and enjoy it.
I really don't know what to say. You're so nice.
That's exactly what to say. Well, I really must be going. I'll see you soon. Perhaps we'll have a chance to talk even more, dear.
Yeah, and even more even.
Yes.
Okay. You take care.
All right now. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. What a nice lady.
She seemed to like you, too, dear. You mind if I ask you one question?
What?
Do we still have to pay the rent?
So, you know,
Hey, Shirley.
yeah.
How about another round of hamburgers with a generous coating of pickles and onions?
Coming right up, Mr. Rockefeller.
Hey, Rerun, thanks, man. This is a real celebration.
Well, why not, Dwayne? The strike is over, I'm back in the money, and I have no more rent worries.
Hey, that's great. And that should make your landlady happy. And I bet Roger's happy, too.
Oh, yeah, they both are very happy. Roger's been spending a lot of time with Mrs. Watson lately.
Is that where he's been all week?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, maybe she's just helping him study property management and taxes and all that stuff. Yeah.
Hi, guys.
How's it going, D?
Hi, D.
D, what's the matter?
I'm worried about Raj. He's been acting weird lately.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Well, my friend, did you notice anything different?
Oh, yeah, Rod. Look like you mugged a mannequin.
No, try again.
You mean your new fancy pipe?
No. Try again.
Raj, you're getting on my nerves.
It's so obvious. I'm growing a beard.
Well, you must have a mouthful of hair because it's not growing out.
Wait a minute, Raj. Oh, man, I think I feel something. Yeah, it's starting to grow out right in front of your ear, man. Oh, that's gonna be a nice one right there.
Thank you, Dwayne.
Oh, yeah, Raj. And that one's gonna be a nice one right there, too.
Thank you, Rerun. Well, it's something I promised myself I'd do someday. Hey, Dwayne. How are you doing in your studies?
Oh, not bad, Raj. I think I'm doing a little better this year.
Ah, jolly good. Proud of you.
Roger? Roger!
Hello, Dolores.
Roger, you look so different.
It's probably the beard. I bet you guessed it right away. It's growing out from right there.
I don't know what it is, but Raj, you're looking real good these days. I bet I'm gonna have to watch out for you.
Thanks for dropping by the table, Dolores. Nice to see you again, and stay well.
I'll be around.
Nice to see you, Dolores. Nice to see you, Dolores. She likes you, Raj. She was practically throwing herself at your feet.
I don't blame her.
Thank you, Dee.
That's the only part of you that doesn't look silly.
She's really going for you, Raj. This is it. Now's the time to strike, Raj. You know you've always been crazy about Dolores.
Rerun.
Yeah?
Dolores is sweet. She's kind, nice. She's a kid.
Well, she's a year older than me.
Exactly.
All right, here's your burgers.
You see, Dwayne, what I'm trying to say is Dolores hasn't lived. See, in order for a woman to be fascinating, she has to, excuse me, on your way?
No, you're not, baby.
She has to travel. You see,
You want some of this, baby?
I've seen the sidewalks of Paris, excuse me, the fountains of Rome. Travel is a very important part of life.
Oh, yeah.
Very
Yeah.
important.
Yeah, I know what you mean, Raj.
You do?
Oh, yeah, I've traveled. You see, I have seen Anaheim in the fall, you see, and El Segundo in the spring. Yeah. There's only one more thing I want to see.
Yeah, and what's that?
I want to see, excuse me? I want to see you over at the counter. alone. Now. Now, Roger.
I'll humor her. Older women have always had a crush on me. What can I do for you, my dear?
Well,
What can I do for you, my dear?
look, if you keep calling me dear, I'm gonna shove an antler up your nose. But listen, that's what I want to talk about. Listen, see now, you know I consider you a smart fellow. You know, isn't he smart? He's real smart. And you're one of my best friends. I mean, in fact, you're the best friend I got.
Oh, thank you, sure.
So, you know, I'm just gonna tell you to you straight out, because I know you have the intelligence to understand it.
Oh, of course. What is it?
You acting like a fool.
Shirley, what are you? Why are you saying that?
Now, just a minute. Let me tell you what I'm saying. See, now, I think you got some kind of crush on this little landlady.
Oh, wait a minute. It's not just a crush.
Well,
it's not
if you
just
keep interrupting me, I'm gonna crush you. Now, see, now, before you go off the deep end, you know, people do get hurt, Raj. And I think you should consider, you know, whether this old lady, what's she, about 35, 36, something like that?
35.
Have you seen that lady? She about 38, ain't she? I think she about 40, huh? She got about 40. Well, anyhow, this old lady, see, I think you should consider whether this old lady is seriously in love with this 19-year-old.
How did you know about? I didn't tell you anything about this.
Now, see, nobody had to tell anybody anything. You see, it's written all over your face. Look here. Ain't it written all over your face? All over your face. Now, take my advice and go erase yourself.
Let me explain this. See, you don't understand the whole story.
See, this conversation is over. I have used up my niceness. You know something? You know that. I was talking to him and you're
Come on, Dwayne. Finish what you're eating fast. We gotta go.
It's a love quiz, Rerun. It's called What Kind of Lover Are You?
Oh, yeah, Raj brought that home.
Yeah.
Well, did you find out what type of lover you are?
I don't know, man. This is pretty tough. Come here, listen. If I meet a beautiful woman at a cocktail party, and she invites me up to her apartment and then says, "Excuse me while I get into something a little more comfortable," and she leaves and returns wearing a very revealing negligee, should I tell her that the negligee does something for her or that she does something for the negligee?
Neither. Tell her she got the wrong guy and to call Rerun Delight.
Hey, come on, you guys promised to clear out of here now.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Tonight's a big night, isn't it, Rob?
Hey, you said it, Dwayne. Dwayne, when a man meets a woman who's right for him, it can be a magical experience. And tonight is it.
It? Wow, it. Tonight is it.
Hey, come on, Dwayne, get off the couch. I had those pillows all fluffed perfectly.
Yeah, come on, Dwayne, we gotta go. Raj wants to be alone with Mrs. Watson.
Hey, Raj, can I stay if I just sit back there and pretend that I'm reading?
No, Dwayne.
We better go, Dwayne. I heard Mrs. Watson tell Raj that this would be a night to remember.
Did she say that, Raj?
Oh, she went a step further.
Further than that? Wow.
She said she's gonna have a big surprise for me.
Oh, man, she's crazy about you.
Hey, don't I know it, Dwayne? Haven't I been trying to convince everybody of that? I happen to have it.
You have it. He has it.
Raj, can't we stay at least until she gets here? I bet she's gonna be dressed like $1,000,000. I like to see her when she's dressed up.
Okay, look, if you promise to leave the second she walks in the door.
You got it.
Hear that, Raj? You got it.
Dwayne.
Hey, look, help me straighten up around here, okay? And I'll see if the wine is chilled.
Yoo-hoo, Roger, yoo-hoo.
Ooh, that's the you of you know who.
Boy, you look so wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you. Get your jacket, dear. We're taking you to your surprise.
Okay. We're?
John and I. Come in, John.
Hello? And you must be Roger.
Huh?
You're not Roger? Please forgive me. Mrs. Watson said that Roger was a cute young fellow. You must be Roger.
Yes, cute young Roger.
John got an extra ticket to the ballet tonight for you, Roger. That's the surprise.
That's the surprise?
Yes, he and I go every week, and I asked him to get an extra ticket for you. I told him how mature you are for your age, and we thought you'd love the ballet.
3 seats on the aisle. My treat.
Isn't he wonderful?
Well, we shouldn't be late. Certainly not at $10 apiece.
That's right. We shouldn't be late, not at $10 apiece. For a ballet on the aisle. Man, well, that's the only place to see it except for the stage. Oh, what a pleasant surprise, man. John, I mean, I love ballet. I mean, I think those tutus are just tutu. Oh, my goodness. Did you ever see Nureyev in Swan Lake?
Why, yeah.
He almost drowned.
Poor Raj.
Hey, Rob.
Now, look, if you guys stayed up to tell me how stupid I am, you can go to bed because I already told me.
No, Raj. We just stayed up to tell you how terrific you are. Dwayne?
Yeah, Raj. I mean, when you realized that Miss Watson was just being nice to you because she thought you were a nice kid and that you reminded her of her dead husband, you never showed disappointment. I mean, you kept your cool, man. You never showed it on your face. Yeah, you told 2 or 3 stupid jokes and acted like a fool like usual and acted like a clown instead of a broken-hearted freshman.
You guys figured it all out, huh?
Yeah, but I was fooled too, Raj. I really did think she had a crush on you.
Hey, let's send her hate mail.
Dwayne. But it is nice of you guys sticking by me like that. But she really didn't do anything wrong. She just liked me a lot, that's all. Then I built all the rest of it up in my mind.
Tell me, Raj, were you really in love? I mean, really in love?
Really in love?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I mean, who knows what in love means?
Dwight Spencer.
Who?
Dwight Spencer.
Who is Dwight Spencer?
He's the guy that got 100 on the love quiz.
Let me check this out, Dwayne. Oh, yeah, that's interesting. Mm-hmm. Stop.
Oh, why do we have to come here for dinner? I bet you wouldn't take any of your dates here.
I bring my dates here all the time.
Maybe that's why you can't keep a steady girl.
Listen, Dee, Mama wanted you to have a hot meal, and you can get it here.
That's not all you can get here either.
Okay, here's the dinner menu. Yeah, give those up. Give them up. Thank you so much.
All right. Shirley, this has the same food as a lunch menu. Why is it a different color?
Well, because by dinner time, the food is a different color. Hey, how about the blue plate special? Hey, it's really moving today.
No, I had it yesterday. It was really moving then, too.
Hamburger.
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 Chickens.
Guess what? I have just acquired my first and what I hope to be a long line of credit cards. Bankmaster, see?
Hey, all right. Fantastic plastic.
Yeah, I may be stout, but now I've got clout.
Credit card? What did you do? Mug call molded?
This is for real, Raj. See, I've had a steady job now for the last 3 months, And the credit card company knows that I'm a stable, responsible, mature adult.
The credit card company didn't see you drop a water balloon on the Avon lady.
Rerun, you better be careful. Credit cards can get you into real trouble.
They can also get you into real restaurants.
Yeah. And real threads, and stereo headphones, and box seats at ball games, and ocean cruises.
Oh, yeah, I can see me now. There I am on the Love Boat, surrounded by 6 beautiful girls. There I am, pooped out on the poop deck.
I don't know, Rerun. Mama always taught us we shouldn't buy anything on credit.
D, our whole system is based on credit. It's the American way, and I am a patriot.
Yeah, Richard Poorhouse Nixon.
If we can change the topic, you've got a hungry child here. Where's the food?
Relax, D. Shirley's coming.
My dear friends, I would be honored if you joined me for a big steak dinner at one of LA's best restaurants.
All right. No. Wait just a minute. No. See, you just can't walk out on food that Rob has spent a lot of time trying to prepare. No, it's wrong, it's inconsiderate, and it's just plain rude.
You're invited, Shirley.
Oh, yeah. Hey, Rob! Look here, I'm going to take my dinner break. I'll be back in about an hour. Wait up!
Hey, Rerun, you mean you can record TV shows when you're not home?
Yep, the timer takes care of that. And I have a special camera where I can tape anything I want. Tonight I'm taping me and Raj having dinner.
Yeah, sort of like Wild Kingdom with people.
Come here, Dwayne, watch this. Come here. Take this. This food process is really something, huh?
Man, that thing eats quicker than Jaws.
What? You bought more stuff today?
Raj, this is my hobby. Some people collect stamps. I collect stuff.
Hey, Raj, man, you gotta see this food processor.
Oh, yeah, I put zucchini, peanut butter, jelly, 2 eggs, oatmeal, and cornstarch in there.
What does it taste like?
I don't know, but I've already used it to glue the leg back on the coffee table.
Sounds good, but I'll just have the leftovers from last night.
Oh, go ahead. I liquefied them. Just help yourself.
Liquefied them?
Yeah.
No, thanks. I don't feel like having a glass of bologna.
Hey, Rerun, let's put a shoe in there.
Dwayne.
Rerun, I told you better be careful. You're overextending yourself. Now, you got stuff here you don't even need.
Like what, Raj?
Like, for one, this aqua lung. Now, what do you need this for?
Well, since I got it, I haven't lost the soap in the bathtub.
Let's put a bar of soap in there.
Raj, maybe you're smart, but you're not as smart as all of these department stores and all companies.
Oh, no. Where did you get those?
I applied for them. Once you get one, the rest are easy.
He's right, Raj. They wouldn't send him all those cards if they didn't think he could afford it. Hey, Rerun, man, let's put a comb in here.
Dwayne. Hey, come here, Raj. I got something for you. Come here.
Oh, Rerun. You didn't have to. What is it?
It's a Chinese army knife. It has a can opener, screwdriver, and chopsticks.
Oh, I really appreciate the thought, Rerun, but I'm worried. I bet your first payment is going to be at least $150.
Shows how much you know, Raj. It's $212. But don't worry, the financial whiz has made arrangements to get the bread.
Rerun, you're getting in over your head. You're going deeper, 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 and deeper.
Don't worry, Raj. That's why I bought the aqua lung. they told me to bring this to you, Mr. Glover.
Ah, Mr. Stubbs, welcome to Homeby Finance. Call me Robert, friend.
Certainly. Call me Rerun, pal.
Have a seat, pal.
Thanks, friend.
Now, let's just run down your financial situation so that we can become better friends. Uh-huh. Suppose you tell me your financial worth in round figures.
Sure, 0.
0. Well, now, let's just check that out, because people are usually worth more than they think. Now, tell me, how much do you have in your checking account?
0.
0. Bonds?
0.
0. Real estate holdings?
0.
0. Now, let's just total that up. Uh-huh. Mr. Stubbs, your net worth is 0.
So what are my chances of getting a loan, Mr. Glover?
0. You're going to have to show some worth.
Thanks, Mr. Glover.
Wait a minute, Mr. Stubbs. How much did you pay for your hat?
$3.98.
Congratulations, you qualify. Sign here.
Hi, Dee. Hi, Shirley.
We're sorry to disturb you, Rerun, but Dee and I have heard so much about your apartment, we just had to see it for ourselves.
Oh, come on in. Come on in. Come on in.
Rerun, this place is, how can I put this?
Gross.
Thank you.
Rerun, you got enough velvet to be an undertaker.
Velvet is very in this year.
Who told you that?
The salesman at Velvet City.
Rerun, what in the world is this?
Shirley, that happens to be a very famous statue.
Well, she looks like a blind date for the Incredible Hulk.
Rerun,
What?
where'd you win this, on Bowling for Garbage?
Hey, Dee, lighten up on Rerun. After all, everyone to his own taste.
Thanks, Shirley. You know, as long as you young ladies are here, you might as well help me decorate. It could use a woman's touch.
Oh, I'll give it a great touch. Get me a sledgehammer. Hey, where you gonna find the money to make the payments?
I arranged for a loan.
A loan?
Yeah, I got some money from some friends so I can make the payments on my credit cards.
Friends?
Yeah, Homeby Finance.
Homeby Finance? Homeby Finance? Oh. My aunt borrowed from them, and they repossessed her car.
So?
She was making a left turn when they did it.
Shirley, that couldn't be Homeby Finance. They're very understanding people.
What do you mean, understand? Oh, Rerun, don't tell me you missed the payment.
Only 2. Hey, that must be the delivery guy now with my new leopard skin drapes.
Frederick.
Mr. Glover.
You didn't write to us like you promised.
I was just about to do that, Mr. Glover.
Oh, too late. We're going to have to repossess everything.
Please don't take my couch and chairs, Mr. Glover.
Don't worry, Frederick. They're not listed as collateral. All we're going to take is the bed, the dresser, the rug, etc., etc., etc. Start in the bedroom, boys.
But, Mr. Glover, I just...
Oh, Frederick, don't worry. They're going to take perfect care of everything. Oh, Miss Wilson, isn't it?
Yes.
Please tell your aunt that I'm really happy with her car.
I'm really sorry about this whole thing.
Don't apologize, Frederick. Friendship is never having to say you're sorry. It's on the list.
Hey, Rerun, why'd they leave this stuff?
I told you this wasn't on the list as collateral.
Hey, guys.
Hey, Rod.
Look, do me a favor. Could you keep it down? I'll be in here studying.
I don't know, Rerun. I don't think Roger's gonna like this.
Don't worry, Dwayne. Roger's a very understanding person.
Oh, no!
I don't think he understands.
Rerun, where's my bed?
The guys from the finance company took it.
And the dresser's gone.
They took that, too.
And the rug's gone. How could they take that?
Well, you see, they rolled the rug up and they stuffed it in the dresser, and they put the dresser on top of the bed, and then they carried it all out. Those guys are fantastic.
Rerun, the room is totally empty. Now, what are we gonna do?
Well, we could go in there and play handball.
Hey, don't make jokes. I mean, why did they take my stuff?
Well, it's like this, Raj. You know, in order for me to get the loan, I had to show more collateral. So I just put your stuff on the list.
And they just put it on a truck.
I'm sorry, Raj, but they didn't take this new furniture. You can sleep on the couch.
Are you kidding? Boy, it'll keep me awake all night. The velvet glows in the dark. Boy, Rerun, this is awful. I mean, they took everything. Everything but the refrigerator's gone. Wait a minute, the refrigerator belongs to the landlady. How could they take that?
You see, Raj? They had this little cart with wheels on it. One guy pushed while the other guy lift. It's all leverage. You'd love it.
Well, this is all crazy. Now, how can you live in an apartment without a refrigerator?
Cheer up, Raj. They left the bologna juice.
I've had enough. Now, I'm through playing games with you.
That's good, because they took the Monopoly set, too.
Raj, everything will work out, won't it?
No, nothing's gonna work out. The credit card company will sue you, the loan company will sue you, and the landlady will sue you. And I'd sue you, too, if I had any sense.
You wouldn't do that, would you, Raj?
I ought to. Boy, I knew this would happen. I could see it coming a mile away.
Well, if you saw it coming, why didn't you warn me?
What? That's it, Rerun. I've done nothing but warn you since you got your first credit card.
Yeah, Rerun, he warned you.
Now, you listen to me, Rerun, and you get this straight.
Yeah, get it straight.
This is your fault. Now, I'm going to sleep in my bed next to my dresser with my rug under it in a room next to my refrigerator. Do you know what that means, Rerun?
I do. It means you're sleeping at the finance company.
Wrong. It means I'm sleeping at home. And I'm not coming back until you get this whole mess straightened out.
Do you think he's mad?
Hey, Brian, can you help me out with a tip, please? A little tip, just something to help me out. Thank you. I really would appreciate that. If you help me out with, well, thank. Hey, man, you dropped the button off your. I don't want that. You got some child. What am I about? Some suckers with that? Okay, Rerun, what's the matter? You haven't even touched your food.
I know. I'm just too upset to eat, Shirley.
Well, I can understand that. You know, if I was you, I'd be at home hiding under the bed.
If you were me, you wouldn't have a bed to hide under. I really did it this time, Shirley. Roger's my best friend, and he walked out on me. He hasn't been home for the last 3 nights, and I don't like being in that apartment by myself.
What?
I am boring.
I can buy that.
Yeah, I just feel so bad about everything. I loused up my life. I loused up Roger's life. I'm just a dumb, stupid, greedy, irresponsible, foolish. Aren't you gonna stop me, Shirley?
Why? You haven't missed yet.
I'm a jerk!
Yes, you certainly are. Now, listen, are you ready to listen to some good sense?
Yeah, man.
Okay, now have a seat. Now, the way I was thinking...
Wait a minute, Shirley. I got something for you.
Oh, Rerun, you didn't have to.
Oh, yes, I did. Go on, open it.
Yeah, I'm going to open it. It costs a lot of money, huh? Boy, give me a little hint. Let me see what... Perfume?
Yes, it's the best.
Yeah, I can see that, Rerun. thanks, but it's not for me.
Why?
Because somehow I just can't picture myself running into a room going, Charlie, Charlie.
But I want you to have this, Shirley. You're my friend.
See, now that's the problem. You're buying all these fancy things to impress people with. That's wrong, Rerun. See, you don't have to buy gifts for your friends because we love you just the way you are.
You do?
Yeah.
Why?
Why? Well, Rerun, you're one of a kind.
Hey, tell me something else you like about me, Shirley.
Something else? Well, basically, you're nice person.
Tell me one other
no, you pressing your luck now, okay? Yeah, too.
Gotcha, Shirley.
Okay.
I gotta be going.
No, sit down, fool. I ain't done yet. Now, it seems to me that you need money and you need it fast.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if I was you, because you know I'm not going to tell you how to run your life, but if I was you, I'd take all that stuff you got sitting around the apartment and I'd have myself one heck of a sale.
Hey, that's a wonderful idea.
Yeah, that's the only kind I have. Now, if you're smart, you get Raj to help you, because he's a real level-headed guy. But don't you ever, you hear me, don't you ever tell him I said so.
I promise. Shirley, you mind if I give you one more present?
Rerun, what have I been saying?
Please, Shirley.
All right. What is it? Hey, get out of here. You guys slobbing over me, then I'll ruin my reputation. People slobbing and was nice, though. Charlie!
Thank you very much.
Hey, Raj, I really appreciate you helping me with this sale.
Hey, forget it, Rerun.
I'll sleep better now that I know we're friends again.
Well, I'll sleep better as soon as my bed is back.
Oh, we have enough of that right now, Raj.
I know. And if we sell everything, you'll have enough to pay off the loan company and most of the credit cards. Come on, we got some hard selling left. Hey, don't you just love it? You didn't love it.
Raj, I don't think I can sell this couch.
Yes, you can. I'm sure there was a sucker born 60 seconds after you were.
Hey, Snake! How's it going, man?
Hey, it's all right. Hey, Rerun, everything is going great. I just got a job, I just got my own pad, and I just got paid.
You just got my attention.
I hear you guys have some furniture to sell.
Yeah, Snake, but you wouldn't be interested in this.
Wow, man. I can really dig the sofa and chairs. Woo, wow.
You can?
Yeah, it's red and orange. Man, if it had some purple, it would match my car. You know, the bucket seats, the floor on the floor. Whoa! Man, I gotta have it.
Snake, you're getting yourself a designer's original. Look at the signature.
Pierre of El Segundo.
I love it. One question. Is the material easy to clean?
Yeah. I mean, you can drop a pizza on here and no one would ever notice it.
So, do you think you guys could consider letting me pay for this on time?
Sure. What time is it now?
About 3:45.
It's time!
All right. Here you are. $170.
Thanks.
Snake, would you be interested in anything else? Like maybe this?
What's that?
Or you put this on your back when you're underwater.
Oh, I don't think so, Raj. If I put that on my back, how am I gonna fit into the shower? Gotcha. Hey, I'm just kidding, man. I don't need an aqua lung. Me and some of my buddies will be back to pick up the sofa and chairs later. Hey, I'll catch y'all later.
See you later.
All right.
Aqualung?
Oh, wow. Hey, Raj, we got a guy looking at the moped.
All right, Dwayne, do your phony bidding stuff.
No problem.
How much is the moped?
Oh, $50.
I'll take it.
$50? Only $50? Only $50? Only $50? I'll give you 100.
You got it. Wait a minute. I'll give you 150.
Fine.
200.
That's pretty high now.
I'll give you 210.
Perfect.
300.
That's too high.
All right, it's mine. Yeah.
Oh, thank you, madam. I'm sure you'll enjoy the goldfish. Their names are Anthony and Cleopatra. Goodbye, baby. Daddy loves you. Don't fight. And remember to brush your teeth after every meal.
Well, we did it. We really did it.
We'd have done it a lot sooner if you hadn't kept outbidding the customers.
Yeah, I can't thank you guys enough.
Stop thanking us and tell us you've learned your lesson.
I did, Raj. Believe me. From now on, I don't buy anything I don't need.
Hey, Rerun, man, you forgot to sell this.
No, I didn't. I need that.
For what?
For this. Credit card coleslaw.
Wow, I can't believe you got all your furniture back from the finance company, Rerun.
Believe it. They're bringing it in now.
Hey, that's all right. Where's Rod?
Oh, he'll be here any second. He said he just couldn't wait to get into his bed. A pillow, sire?
Oh, thank you. March on.
The first time Raj Henderson realized that the past was not finished with him, it announced itself in the most ordinary way possible, through the thin walls of his apartment on Crenshaw Boulevard, where the voice of a woman he had never met echoed with the authority of a judge and the intimacy of a mother who believed the world was forever in her debt, a voice complaining about the water pressure, about the smell of someone else's cooking, about the music that sounded suspiciously like joy, and Raj, now in his 40s, heavier around the middle, slower in the knees, stood barefoot on the carpet holding a mug of coffee that had already gone cold, thinking that Los Angeles had always had a way of circling back on him, of taking whatever life he tried to build and folding it neatly into the shape of what it had always been, because this was not the first time he had lived under a landlady. And it was certainly not the first time a woman with too much power over his daily existence had reminded him of how little control he truly had. Years ago, when he was younger and louder and convinced that life was an endless series of jokes waiting for the right punchline, Raj had shared space, dreams, and a cramped apartment with Dwayne and Rerun, back when they were trying to figure out what being grown men actually meant, back when, what's happening now, had been less a question and more a challenge thrown at the future, but time, as it always does, had scattered them into separate corners of responsibility, regret, and reluctant maturity. Now Raj worked at a community center that barely stayed afloat, organizing after-school programs and charity events that nobody wanted to fund, and he told himself he was doing meaningful work even when the bills on his kitchen counter suggested otherwise, and the apartment he lived in was not glamorous, not even comfortable, but it was affordable, which in Los Angeles was a kind of miracle. And it was run by Mrs. Evelyn Crawford, the landlady whose presence seemed to leak through the building like an unavoidable draft. Mrs. Crawford had inherited the building from her late husband, a man she mentioned often and fondly, usually in the same breath as complaints about how nobody did things the way he used to, and she treated the tenants not as customers but as temporary guests who should be grateful for every inch of space they occupied, and she had a habit of appearing without warning, keys jangling, eyes sharp, as if the building itself had whispered secrets into her ear. Raj had met her officially only a week earlier, when he signed the lease, and even then he had sensed that this woman would not simply be a background figure in his life but an active force, someone who would insert herself into his days whether invited or not, because Mrs. Crawford did not believe in the concept of privacy as anything more than a suggestion. The building was old, the kind of old that creaked at night and smelled faintly of dust and forgotten conversations, and the tenants were a rotating cast of people trying to survive the city, a young couple arguing softly behind closed doors, a retired bus driver who watched game shows too loudly, a college student who practiced guitar badly and enthusiastically, and Raj, who had convinced himself that this was just another temporary stop, another chapter that would eventually close, even though a quieter voice inside him suspected that he had been saying that for most of his life. The morning Mrs. Crawford knocked on his door for the first time, it was not with her knuckles but with the end of a pen, tapping sharply, insistently, and when Raj opened the door she did not wait for an invitation but stepped inside, her eyes already scanning the apartment, taking inventory, noting flaws, as if she were inspecting a crime scene, and she commented immediately on the position of his couch, on the fact that his sink had a slow drip, on the way his books were stacked unevenly. And Raj, who had once argued passionately with bosses, friends, and strangers on the street, found himself nodding politely, smiling in that careful way adults learn when they are trying not to provoke someone who holds the power to make their lives significantly worse. Mrs. Crawford talked about rules, about quiet hours, about the importance of respect, and her version of respect seemed to involve obedience and silence, and when she finally left, after reminding him that she lived just downstairs and could hear everything, Raj closed the door and leaned against it, laughing softly to himself, because there was something absurdly familiar about the whole thing. Something that reminded him of long ago lectures from his father, from teachers, from anyone who believed that Raj's natural state of relaxed curiosity was actually a flaw that needed correction. As the days passed, Mrs. Crawford's presence became more pronounced, her notes appearing under doors, her comments delivered in the hallway with a smile that never quite reached her eyes, and Raj began to notice that other tenants reacted to her with the same mixture of fear and resignation, as if she were less a person and more a force of nature, like an unexpected storm or a heat wave that could not be argued with, only endured. It was during one of these hallway encounters that Raj ran into Dwayne for the first time in years, a coincidence so unlikely that for a moment Raj wondered if the universe was deliberately messing with him, because Dwayne had always had a way of showing up when Raj least expected him, wearing that familiar grin that suggested trouble and comfort in equal measure. Dwayne had changed, of course, the way all of them had, his hairline receding, his eyes a little more cautious, but the energy was still there, the sense that he was always halfway into a story, and he explained, with a shrug and a laugh, that he was temporarily crashing with a friend in the building, just until he got back on his feet, and Raj felt a strange warmth at the thought of someone from his past sharing the same cramped space, even if only briefly. Mrs. Crawford appeared almost immediately, as if summoned by the sound of recognition, and she eyed Dwayne with open suspicion, asking which apartment he belonged to, how long he would be staying, and whether he had filled out the proper paperwork, and Dwayne, who had never been good at authority, answered politely enough but with a tone that hinted at defiance, and Raj could see the tension spark between them, the beginning of something that felt inevitable. That night, Raj lay awake listening to the building breathe, to footsteps above and below, to the distant sound of sirens, and he thought about how life had a way of repeating patterns, of introducing new characters who played old roles, and he wondered what it meant that he had once again found himself under the watchful eye of a landlady who seemed determined to control not just where he lived but how he lived, and whether this was simply bad luck or some deeper failure to move beyond the person he had always been. The next morning brought another knock, softer this time but no less determined, and Mrs. Crawford stood there holding a clipboard, informing Raj that there would be a building meeting that evening, mandatory attendance, to discuss issues of cleanliness, noise, and respect, and as she spoke, Raj felt a familiar mix of amusement and dread, because he knew, deep down, that meetings like this were never really about rules but about power, about who got to speak and who was expected to listen. At the meeting, held in the cramped laundry room, Mrs. Crawford positioned herself at the center, her clipboard like a shield, and she spoke at length about the building as if it were an extension of herself, something she had sacrificed for, something that required discipline to maintain, and as the tenants stood or sat on folding chairs, nodding along, Raj noticed the way her words slid easily from practical concerns into personal judgments, and he realized that this woman did not simply want tenants, she wanted subjects. Dwayne leaned over and whispered jokes, trying to lighten the mood, and Raj had to fight the urge to laugh, because he could feel Mrs. Crawford's eyes on them, sharp and disapproving, and for a moment he was transported back to his youth, to classrooms and living rooms where laughter had been an act of rebellion. After the meeting, as people dispersed, Mrs. Crawford stopped Raj and told him, in a tone that was almost kind, that she expected better from him, that he seemed like a responsible man, someone who understood the value of rules, and Raj thanked her, because that was what he had learned to do, to thank people for expectations he had never agreed to. Walking back to his apartment, Raj thought about how adulthood had promised freedom but often delivered a different kind of confinement, one where the walls were invisible but no less real, and he wondered how long he could stay in a place where even his silence felt monitored. In the days that followed, Mrs. Crawford's involvement in his life grew more personal, her comments more pointed, her suggestions edging into instructions, and Raj began to sense that she had taken a particular interest in him, perhaps because she saw in him someone who could be molded, someone who would comply without complaint, and this realization stirred something restless inside him. A memory of who he used to be when he had questioned everything, when he had believed that life was meant to be lived loudly. One evening, as he and Dwayne sat on the steps outside the building, sharing cheap takeout and memories, Dwayne laughed and said that some things never changed, that there was always a Mrs. Crawford in every chapter of life, someone convinced that their way was the only way, and Raj smiled, but the thought lingered, heavy and uncomfortable, because he was no longer sure whether the problem was the landlady or the fact that he kept ending up in places where women like her could have so much control over him. As the sun dipped below the horizon and the city lights flickered on, Raj looked up at the building, at the windows glowing with other people's lives, and he felt the quiet certainty that this was only the beginning, that Mrs. Crawford was not just a nuisance or a source of irritation but a catalyst, a figure who would force him to confront the question he had been avoiding for years. What happens now, when the past refuses to stay buried and the future demands a response? By the second week of living under Mrs. Evelyn Crawford's watchful eye, Raj Henderson began to understand that the building was less a collection of apartments and more a carefully managed ecosystem in which every sound, smell, and movement was noted, categorized, and, when necessary, corrected, and this understanding crept into his days subtly, changing the way he walked down the hallway, the way he closed his door, the way he laughed on the phone, because awareness had a weight to it, and that weight pressed down on him even during moments that should have felt private. The hallway itself became a kind of borderland, a narrow strip of worn carpet and yellowed walls where tenants shifted their expressions instinctively, conversations dropping in volume the moment footsteps echoed from the stairs, because Mrs. Crawford moved through that space with the quiet authority of someone who believed she belonged everywhere at once. Raj noticed how she always seemed to appear at moments of transition, when people were leaving for work, returning home, carrying groceries, or greeting guests, and it was as if she positioned herself deliberately at the edges of their routines, reminding them that nothing in this building happened without her implicit approval. For Raj, who had spent years convincing himself that he was comfortable with compromise, with bending just enough to get by, this constant surveillance stirred a discomfort he could not easily name, because it was not fear exactly, nor anger, but something closer to erosion, the slow wearing away of ease. Dwayne, on the other hand, responded differently, his irritation visible, his jokes sharper, his patience thinner, and Raj found himself caught between admiration and concern, because Dwayne had always been the one to push back, to question authority with a grin and a shrug, and that instinct, so endearing in their youth, now felt risky in a place where the consequences were immediate and tangible. One afternoon, as Raj returned from work carrying a box of donated supplies for the community center, he found Mrs. Crawford waiting outside his door, her clipboard tucked under her arm like a familiar companion, and before he could even greet her, she pointed out that the box looked heavy and asked whether he planned to store items that did not belong to him in the apartment. And Raj explained patiently that the box was temporary, that he was sorting supplies, that it would be gone by morning. And Mrs. Crawford nodded, smiling tightly, but followed his explanation with a reminder that the lease specified personal belongings only, that the building was not a storage facility, and Raj felt the familiar urge to apologize for something that did not quite feel wrong. As she spoke, Raj became acutely aware of the imbalance between them, of how easily her interpretation of a rule could reshape his reality, and he wondered whether she knew the effect she had on people or whether she simply saw herself as maintaining order in a world that would otherwise descend into chaos. That evening, Dwayne knocked on Raj's door, his expression unusually serious, and when Raj let him in, Dwayne launched into a story about how Mrs. Crawford had confronted the friend he was staying with, demanding to know why an unregistered guest had been sleeping there, how long he planned to remain, and whether rent would be adjusted accordingly, and Dwayne's frustration spilled out in exaggerated gestures and half-finished sentences. But beneath the humor Raj could hear genuine anxiety. Because Dwayne's life, like Raj's, was not built on stability, and the idea of being forced out on short notice was not an abstract fear but a very real possibility. They talked late into the night, reminiscing about old times, about shared apartments where landlords had been distant figures at best, names on checks, not omnipresent judges, and Raj realized how much he had missed this kind of conversation, the easy rhythm of shared history, the comfort of being understood without explanation. Yet even in that moment of connection, there was an undercurrent of tension, because the walls were thin, and both men lowered their voices instinctively, and Raj hated himself a little for that reflex, for the way his body had learned compliance even when his mind resisted it. The next morning brought another building notice, this one taped prominently near the mailboxes, announcing inspections scheduled for the end of the week, routine checks for maintenance and safety, but the language was vague enough to feel threatening, and Raj watched as tenants gathered around the notice, exchanging worried glances, murmuring to one another, each person mentally cataloging whatever small infraction might suddenly become significant. At work, Raj found it difficult to concentrate, his thoughts drifting back to the building, to the sense that his home had become a site of evaluation rather than rest, and this distraction did not go unnoticed by his colleagues, who teased him lightly about looking haunted, and Raj laughed along, because explaining the situation felt too complicated, too small and too large at the same time. When inspection day arrived, Mrs. Crawford was accompanied by a man Raj had never seen before, quiet and impassive, carrying a clipboard of his own, and they moved from apartment to apartment with methodical efficiency, and when they reached Raj's door, he felt an irrational surge of defensiveness, as if his personal space were about to be violated in a way that went beyond practicality. Inside, Mrs. Crawford commented on everything, from the arrangement of furniture to the cleanliness of the bathroom, and although most of her remarks were framed as suggestions, Raj could hear the implied criticism beneath them, and he found himself explaining choices he had never felt the need to justify before, his words tumbling out too quickly, his tone apologetic. When the inspection was over, Mrs. Crawford paused at the door and told him that overall he was doing well, that she appreciated tenants who took pride in their living space, and the phrase stuck with Raj, because it suggested that pride, in her eyes, was defined by adherence to her standards rather than any internal sense of dignity. Later that day, Raj encountered the retired bus driver in the laundry room, a man who usually kept to himself, and for the first time they spoke at length, sharing stories of previous inspections, of tenants who had been asked to leave over minor issues, of how Mrs. Crawford's late husband had been more lenient, more distant, and how things had changed since his passing, and Raj listened carefully, realizing that what he was experiencing was not personal but systemic, a pattern that had shaped the building long before he arrived. This realization did not bring comfort so much as clarity, because it meant that any attempt to appease Mrs. Crawford would only ever be temporary, that the rules could shift at any moment, and that compliance did not guarantee peace. That night, Raj dreamed of hallways that stretched endlessly, doors that led back to the same room, and voices calling his name from behind walls he could not see through, and he woke with a sense of unease that lingered throughout the morning. Dwayne, sensing Raj's mood, suggested they do something impulsive, something that reminded them they were still alive, and they ended up driving aimlessly through the city, windows down, music loud, laughing at nothing in particular, and for a few hours Raj felt lighter, freer, as if the world had expanded again. But when they returned to the building, Mrs. Crawford was waiting, her expression disapproving, her gaze lingering on the car, on Dwayne, on the way Raj's laughter faded as he stepped out, and she commented on the noise, on the late hour, on the importance of consideration, and Raj nodded, murmured agreement, while something inside him tightened. After she left, Dwayne scoffed, muttering about power trips and small empires, and Raj wanted to agree wholeheartedly, but he also felt the familiar pull of caution, the calculation of risk, the knowledge that rebellion carried a price he was not sure he could afford. In the quiet of his apartment, Raj sat alone and thought about the concept of home, about how it was supposed to be a refuge, a place where one could exhale, and he realized that his current situation forced him to confront a deeper question, one he had avoided by moving from place to place, from job to job, from phase to phase. How much of himself was he willing to shrink to maintain stability? Mrs. Crawford, whether she intended it or not, had become a mirror reflecting his own habits of accommodation, and that realization was unsettling, because it suggested that the true conflict was not just with a landlady but with the version of himself that had learned to accept discomfort as normal. As Raj prepared for bed, the sounds of the building settling around him, he sensed that lines were being drawn, not just in the hallway but within himself, and that eventually he would have to decide whether to continue navigating quietly within those boundaries or to challenge them, knowing full well that either choice would change the shape of his life in ways he could not yet predict. By the time the third week settled into the bones of the building like an old ache that flared with the weather, Raj Henderson began to notice that resistance did not always announce itself loudly, that sometimes it took the shape of hesitation, of a pause before agreement, of a question asked gently but with intent, And this realization arrived not as a sudden revelation but as a slow accumulation of moments in which he felt something inside him shift, almost imperceptibly, away from reflexive compliance and toward something more deliberate. It started one morning in the hallway, when Mrs. Crawford stopped him as he was locking his door, her voice brisk and polite as she reminded him that garbage was to be taken out only after 6 in the evening, never in the morning, because the bins attracted animals, and Raj, instead of nodding immediately, asked why the rule existed when the bins were sealed and the city pickup came twice a week regardless of timing. And the question hung between them, light but unmistakable, and Mrs. Crawford's eyes narrowed slightly, not in anger but in surprise, as if she were unused to having her instructions examined rather than absorbed. She responded with a vague explanation about experience and common sense, and Raj thanked her, but as he walked away he felt a subtle thrill, not because he had won anything but because he had spoken without apology, and that small act echoed in his mind throughout the day. At work, Raj found himself unusually energized, engaging more openly with the kids at the community center, pushing back gently when a supervisor dismissed one of his ideas, and he wondered whether the pressure he felt at home had sharpened his awareness elsewhere, turning every interaction into a test of how much space he was willing to claim. Dwayne noticed the change almost immediately, commenting that Raj seemed lighter somehow, more like his old self, and Raj laughed, brushing it off. But privately he knew that something was indeed changing, that the presence of Mrs. Crawford had forced him into a confrontation he had long postponed, a confrontation with his own tendency to smooth over conflict rather than face it directly. This internal shift did not go unnoticed by the landlady, who began to adjust her approach, her comments becoming more pointed, her smiles tighter, as if she sensed that the balance she relied on was beginning to wobble. One evening, she called another building meeting, this time specifically to address what she described as a decline in standards, and as tenants gathered once again in the laundry room, Raj felt a familiar tension in the air, a collective anticipation of being scolded. Mrs. Crawford spoke at length about responsibility, about respect, about how difficult it was to manage a building when people did not follow rules, and although she never mentioned names, her gaze lingered on Raj and Dwayne often enough to feel intentional. As she spoke, Raj noticed murmurs among the tenants, small expressions of agreement and dissent, and he realized that he was not alone in his discomfort, that many of them shared his unease but lacked either the energy or the security to express it. When Mrs. Crawford finally paused and asked if there were any questions, the room fell silent, the kind of silence that felt heavy with unspoken thoughts, and Raj felt his heart rate quicken, because he knew that this was one of those moments that defined patterns, that either reinforced existing dynamics or disrupted them. He raised his hand, slowly, deliberately, and asked whether the rules could be clarified in writing, whether tenants could have a say in decisions that affected their daily routines, whether there was a process for feedback that went both ways, and as he spoke, he kept his tone calm, respectful, because he did not want to provoke defensiveness, only dialogue. Mrs. Crawford's response was measured but dismissive, emphasizing that she had always acted in the best interest of the building, that experience had taught her what worked, and that too many opinions only led to disorder, and Raj nodded, but he did not retreat, instead pointing out that clarity and communication could prevent misunderstandings, that people were more likely to comply when they understood the reasoning behind rules. The exchange was brief, restrained, but charged, and when the meeting ended, the room buzzed with quiet conversations, tenants approaching Raj to thank him, to share their own frustrations in hushed tones, and Raj felt a strange mixture of pride and apprehension, because he knew that visibility came with consequences. Dwayne clapped him on the back. grinning, calling him a hero, but Raj could see the worry in his eyes too, because both men understood that Mrs. Crawford was not someone who appreciated being challenged, however politely. The following days were marked by an increase in scrutiny, notes appearing more frequently, inspections announced with less notice, and Raj felt the weight of Mrs. Crawford's attention settle on him like a spotlight, and although part of him wanted to retreat, to smooth things over, another part, newly awakened, refused to fully recede. Instead, Raj began to document everything, saving notes, recording dates and times, reading through his lease with fresh eyes, and this act of preparation gave him a sense of control he had not felt in years, because knowledge, he realized, was a form of quiet rebellion. He also began talking more openly with other tenants, organizing informal conversations in the courtyard, sharing information, and these small gatherings fostered a sense of community that had been largely absent before, because fear had kept people isolated, and isolation was a powerful tool for maintaining authority. Mrs. Crawford noticed these gatherings almost immediately, commenting pointedly on loitering and noise, but Raj countered calmly that the courtyard was a shared space, that they were within allowed hours, and each time he did so, he felt the line inside him hold firm. At the same time, Raj struggled with doubt, lying awake at night wondering whether he was being reckless, whether he was risking his housing for a principle that might not be worth the cost, and these doubts were amplified by memories of past instability, of times when speaking up had led to loss rather than change. Dwayne, sensing this internal conflict, shared his own fears, admitting that he admired Raj's stance but worried about the fallout, and their conversations deepened, moving beyond jokes and nostalgia into more vulnerable territory, as they confronted the reality of middle age, of limited safety nets, of the stakes involved in even small acts of defiance. The tension reached a new level when Mrs. Crawford issued a formal warning to Dwayne's friend, citing unauthorized occupancy, and the threat of eviction loomed, and Raj felt a surge of anger that cut through his usual caution, because this was no longer abstract or theoretical, it was personal, affecting someone he cared about. He accompanied Dwayne to speak with Mrs. Crawford, insisting on clarity, on due process, on fairness, and although the conversation remained outwardly civil, the hostility beneath it was unmistakable, and Raj left with the sense that he had crossed an invisible threshold, that there was no longer any pretense of mutual goodwill. In the aftermath, Raj noticed subtle shifts in the building's atmosphere, a growing solidarity among tenants, small acts of kindness and support, and this collective energy both comforted and alarmed him, because it suggested the possibility of real change but also the likelihood of escalation. One night, as Raj sat alone in his apartment, surrounded by the familiar sounds of the building, he reflected on how easily comfort could become confinement, how rules could masquerade as order while suppressing individuality, and he realized that Mrs. Crawford represented not just an external authority but the internalized voice that had guided many of his choices, the voice that urged caution, that equated peace with silence. Challenging her, then, was as much about reclaiming his own agency as it was about improving life in the building, and this realization brought both clarity and fear, because it meant that retreat was no longer an option without a sense of loss. As the week drew to a close, Raj sensed that the situation was approaching a tipping point, that the quiet rebellion he had helped nurture was testing the limits of Mrs. Crawford's control, and he wondered how far he was willing to go, whether he was prepared for the consequences of standing firm, and what it would mean for him if he backed down now, knowing what he knew about himself. The question lingered, heavy and unresolved, as Raj turned off the lights and prepared for sleep, aware that the next move, whether made by him or by the landlady, would set the tone for everything that followed. The notice arrived on a Tuesday morning, slipped under Raj Henderson's door with the quiet efficiency of something that did not want to be debated, and when he bent down to pick it up, still half asleep, wearing an old t-shirt from a charity run he barely remembered, he sensed immediately that this thin piece of paper carried more weight than its appearance suggested. Because Mrs. Evelyn Crawford never communicated anything of consequence casually, every word she chose sharpened into a tool. Every sentence balanced carefully between politeness and threat, and as Raj stood in his kitchen reading the formal language printed in bold, his coffee maker gurgling uselessly behind him, he felt the now familiar tightening in his chest that came whenever her authority moved from suggestion into action. The notice cited multiple, minor violations, none of which were described in detail, and concluded with a reminder that continued non-compliance could result in termination of lease, and Raj read it twice, slowly, noting the vagueness, the lack of specifics, the way it created fear without offering a clear path to resolution. And he realized that this was not an administrative error or a coincidence but a calculated move, a way of reasserting control after weeks of subtle pushback. He folded the notice carefully and placed it on the table, sitting down across from it as if it were another person in the room, and for a moment he simply breathed, allowing the initial wave of anger to pass, because he knew that reacting impulsively would only play into Mrs. Crawford's expectations. Instead, he reached for his notebook, the one he had begun keeping since the inspections, and wrote down the date, the time, the wording of the notice, and his immediate thoughts, grounding himself in documentation, in facts, in something solid. As he prepared for work, Raj noticed how his movements felt heavier, more deliberate, as if each step required conscious effort, and he wondered whether this was what it meant to stand one's ground in middle age, not the dramatic confrontations of youth but a sustained willingness to endure discomfort without retreat. In the hallway, he ran into the college student with the guitar, who glanced at the notice in Raj's hand and nodded knowingly, murmuring that she had received one too, and this small exchange shifted something in Raj, because it confirmed what he had suspected, that Mrs. Crawford was escalating across the board, not targeting individuals randomly but responding to a collective change in behavior with a collective reminder of her power. At work, Raj found it difficult to focus, the notice lingering in his mind like an unresolved argument, and when a coworker asked if everything was okay, he hesitated before answering honestly, explaining the situation in broad strokes, and to his surprise, the coworker listened intently, sharing a story of her own struggles with a landlord who blurred boundaries and wielded rules selectively. And this brief moment of empathy reminded Raj that his experience was part of a larger pattern, that housing, like so many aspects of life, often came down to who held leverage and how they chose to use it. When Raj returned home that evening, Dwayne was waiting for him on the steps, his expression serious, and before Raj could say anything, Dwayne pulled a similar notice from his jacket pocket, waving it with a mixture of anger and disbelief, and the two men sat there reading and rereading the documents, comparing language, noting the identical phrasing, and the realization that this was coordinated rather than personal only deepened their resolve. They talked long into the night, weighing options, considering worst-case scenarios, and although fear threaded through the conversation, so did a growing sense of solidarity, because there was something strangely comforting about facing uncertainty together rather than alone. Over the next few days, Raj became acutely aware of Mrs. Crawford's presence, noticing how she lingered in common areas, how her gaze followed conversations, how her comments became more formal, less conversational, as if she had shifted into a different mode, one where tenants were no longer individuals but potential problems to be managed. Raj responded by becoming even more careful, measuring his words, keeping his apartment impeccably clean, documenting every interaction, and yet he refused to withdraw from the informal gatherings that had begun to take root among the tenants, because he understood now that isolation was exactly what Mrs. Crawford wanted, and that community, however fragile, was their strongest defense. One evening, as Raj stood in the courtyard talking with the retired bus driver and the young couple from the second floor, Mrs. Crawford appeared at the edge of the space, arms crossed, her expression unreadable, and for a moment the conversation faltered, the old instinct to disperse rising instinctively, but Raj caught the bus driver's eye and continued speaking, calmly, evenly, and the others followed suit. And this small act of collective steadiness felt more powerful than any argument. Mrs. Crawford did not interrupt, but she did not leave either, standing there for several minutes before turning away, and the silence she left behind was thick with unspoken meaning, because it was clear that the lines being drawn were no longer subtle. That night, Raj lay awake thinking about the notice, about the possibility of eviction, about the practical consequences of losing his apartment, and fear crept in despite his best efforts, conjuring images of scrambling for housing, of couch surfing, of explaining yet another upheaval to coworkers and friends, and he wondered whether his principles were worth this level of risk, whether stubbornness masquerading as integrity might cost him more than he could afford. Yet even as these doubts surfaced, so did a quieter but steadier conviction, the sense that backing down now would confirm a pattern he had lived with for decades, one in which discomfort was endured rather than challenged, one in which peace was purchased at the expense of self-respect. The following morning, Raj requested a formal meeting with Mrs. Crawford, submitting his request in writing, citing the notice and asking for clarification, and the act itself felt significant, because it transformed a unilateral warning into a dialogue, however unwilling. The meeting was scheduled for later that week, and the anticipation of it colored Raj's days, sharpening his awareness of every interaction, every glance, every rule enforced or ignored. In preparation, Raj reviewed tenant rights, consulted online resources, and spoke with a local housing advocacy group, learning that many of Mrs. Crawford's tactics relied on intimidation rather than legal authority, and this knowledge steadied him, because it replaced vague fear with concrete understanding. When the day of the meeting arrived, Raj dressed carefully, choosing clothes that made him feel composed rather than defensive, and as he walked downstairs to Mrs. Crawford's apartment, he was struck by the irony of entering her personal space after weeks of feeling his own invaded. Inside, her apartment was immaculate, meticulously organized, every object in its place, and Raj realized that this environment reflected her worldview perfectly, a belief that order equaled virtue and deviation equaled threat. Mrs. Crawford greeted him politely, gesturing for him to sit, and the conversation that followed was outwardly civil but charged beneath the surface, as Raj asked for specifics regarding the notice, requested written clarification of the alleged violations, and calmly asserted his intention to comply with clearly defined rules. Mrs. Crawford responded defensively at first, emphasizing her experience, her sacrifices, the difficulty of managing tenants who did not respect boundaries, and Raj listened without interrupting, because he understood that allowing her to speak was part of maintaining control of the interaction. When he finally responded, he did so carefully, acknowledging her perspective while reiterating his need for transparency and fairness, and although she did not concede outright, Raj sensed a shift, a subtle recalibration, as if she had expected deference and instead encountered resolve. The meeting ended without resolution, but with an agreement to follow up in writing, and as Raj left, he felt both exhausted and strangely energized, because regardless of the outcome, he had spoken for himself in a way he rarely had before. Word of the meeting spread quickly among the tenants, and Raj found himself fielding questions, offering reassurance where he could, and caution where he could not, and this new role, as an informal spokesperson, sat uneasily with him, because he had never sought leadership, yet he recognized that sometimes responsibility arrived uninvited. In the days that followed, the building existed in a state of uneasy calm, a pause between actions, and Raj sensed that Mrs. Crawford was recalculating, deciding her next move, and this waiting was perhaps the hardest part, because uncertainty gnawed at him, testing his resolve. One evening, as Raj sat alone in his apartment, the notice still folded neatly on his table, he reflected on how a single piece of paper had forced him to confront not just a landlord's authority but his own habits of avoidance, and he realized that regardless of what happened next, he had already crossed an internal threshold, one that could not easily be uncrossed. The building around him creaked and settled, the sounds of other lives unfolding through thin walls, and Raj felt a deep, steady awareness that the conflict with Mrs. Crawford was no longer just about housing but about identity, about the kind of man he chose to be when challenged, and as he prepared for bed, he knew that the next escalation, whatever form it took, would demand even more from him, and that retreat, though tempting, would come at a cost he was no longer willing to pay. The calm that settled over the building after Raj Henderson's meeting with Mrs. Evelyn Crawford was not the kind that brought rest but the kind that tightened muscles and sharpened senses, a brittle stillness that suggested preparation rather than peace, and Raj felt it in the way footsteps paused longer outside doors, in the way conversations ended abruptly when Mrs. Crawford's silhouette appeared at the end of the hallway, in the way even the building itself seemed to hold its breath, creaking less at night as if aware that attention was being paid. Raj went about his routines with careful consistency, waking early, leaving for work at the same time each day, keeping his apartment immaculate, not out of submission but out of strategy, because he understood now that visibility made him vulnerable and precision gave him protection, and yet even with all this vigilance, he could not escape the sense that something was building beneath the surface. That Mrs. Crawford was not a woman who simply absorbed challenge and moved on. She was a woman who cataloged slights, who interpreted questions as threats, and who believed deeply that authority, once questioned, had to be reaffirmed decisively. This belief manifested first in small ways, a sudden enforcement of obscure clauses in the lease, notices about hallway decorations, reminders about parking assignments, and Raj watched as tenants reacted with a mixture of irritation and fear, some retreating into old habits of avoidance, others growing more openly frustrated. And he felt the weight of expectation settle on him because his earlier willingness to speak had marked him, whether he liked it or not, as a reference point. Duane, whose situation remained precarious, grew increasingly restless, chafing under the constant scrutiny, and Raj found himself trying to balance encouragement with caution, because he knew that one misstep could be amplified into justification for removal, and the responsibility of that knowledge sat heavily on his shoulders. One evening, as Raj returned from work, he found the retired bus driver sitting on the steps, his expression troubled, and the man explained that Mrs. Crawford had entered his apartment without notice, citing a maintenance concern that turned out to be nothing more than an excuse to look around, to remind him of her access, and Raj felt a surge of anger that surprised him with its intensity, because this was no longer about rules or paperwork but about dignity, about the fundamental right to feel secure in one's own space. Raj listened carefully, offering sympathy and advice, encouraging the man to document the incident, and as he spoke, he realized that his role had shifted yet again, that he was becoming not just a participant but an organizer, a conduit through which frustration flowed and began to take shape. Over the next few days, Raj helped several tenants draft written complaints, formal but measured, requesting clarification and adherence to proper notice requirements, and although some were hesitant, worried about retaliation, others found courage in numbers, in the knowledge that they were not isolated in their discomfort. Mrs. Crawford responded to these complaints with a general notice posted near the mailboxes, reminding tenants of her rights as property manager and warning against what she described as coordinated disruption, and the language was sharp enough to send a ripple of anxiety through the building, because it framed collective action as misconduct. Raj read the notice carefully, noting its tone, its implications, and he felt a familiar conflict rise within him, the tension between self-preservation and principle, because he knew that continued resistance increased risk, yet backing down now would leave others exposed. At work, Raj's distraction deepened, and his supervisor called him into her office, expressing concern about his focus, and Raj, after a moment's hesitation, explained that he was dealing with a housing issue, and to his surprise, she listened with empathy rather than impatience. Sharing her own past experiences and reminding him that the community center valued him, that support existed beyond his immediate crisis, and this reassurance steadied him more than he expected, because it reminded him that his life was larger than the building, that losing one apartment, while devastating, would not erase his worth. That night, Raj dreamed again of hallways, but this time they were filled with people, tenants standing shoulder to shoulder, doors open, lights spilling out, and he woke with a sense of resolve that lingered through the morning. The escalation arrived in earnest when Mrs. Crawford scheduled another mandatory meeting, this one with an outside representative present, someone introduced as a consultant, and the presence of this unfamiliar figure heightened the tension, because it suggested formalization, a move toward official action. The meeting unfolded with a veneer of professionalism, the consultant speaking in neutral terms about expectations and responsibilities, but Mrs. Crawford's influence was evident in the framing, in the emphasis on compliance over communication, and when the floor was opened for questions, the familiar silence settled in, heavy and charged. Raj waited, scanning the room, seeing fear and frustration etched on faces, and he felt the now recognizable pull, the sense that if he did not speak, the opportunity would close and the narrative would harden. He raised his hand and spoke calmly, outlining specific concerns, citing lease language, describing incidents without embellishment, and as he did so, he felt a strange clarity, because this was no longer about personal grievance but about establishing boundaries, about insisting that authority be exercised transparently. The consultant responded with carefully neutral language, acknowledging concerns, promising review, and Mrs. Crawford's expression remained controlled but tight, her jaw set, and Raj knew that while the exchange appeared balanced on the surface, it represented another fracture in the illusion of unquestioned control. After the meeting, Mrs. Crawford approached Raj privately, her tone low and measured, warning him that stirring unrest did not benefit anyone, that stability required trust, and Raj responded just as quietly that trust required fairness, and the words hung between them, simple and irrevocable. In the days that followed, the building felt like a chessboard, pieces repositioned subtly, inspections announced and postponed, repairs delayed and then expedited, and Raj sensed that Mrs. Crawford was testing responses, gauging resolve, deciding how far she could push without provoking something she could not easily contain. The strain began to show in Raj's personal life, his sleep disrupted, his patience thinner, and Dwayne noticed, urging him to take care, reminding him that burnout served no one, and Raj appreciated the concern but struggled to disengage, because the situation demanded constant attention, constant calibration. One evening, Raj received a call from a housing advocacy group he had contacted earlier, informing him that they were willing to review the building's practices, to offer guidance, and possibly to mediate, and this development brought both hope and anxiety, because it introduced an external element that could either de-escalate the conflict or provoke further retaliation. Raj shared the news cautiously with a few trusted tenants, gauging reactions, and found a mix of relief and fear, because involving outsiders felt like crossing another line, making the conflict undeniable. Mrs. Crawford seemed to sense this shift almost immediately, her demeanor becoming more formal, her interactions more distant, and Raj recognized this as a strategic withdrawal, a recalibration designed to regain footing. The true escalation came unexpectedly, when Raj returned home one afternoon to find a notice taped to his door informing him of a scheduled reinspection of his apartment, citing previous concerns, and the lack of specificity immediately set off alarms, because he knew now how such vagueness could be weaponized. He took a deep breath, documented the notice, and began preparing, cleaning again, reviewing his lease, arranging for a friend to be present if possible, because he understood that visibility could be both a shield and a risk. When the reinspection occurred, Mrs. Crawford arrived alone, without the consultant, and the atmosphere was tense but controlled, and as she moved through the apartment, commenting on trivialities, Raj responded politely but firmly, asking that any issues be noted in writing, requesting clarification, and although she complied outwardly, he could see irritation flicker beneath her composed exterior. After she left, Raj sat alone in his apartment, exhaustion washing over him, and he allowed himself a moment of doubt, questioning whether this struggle was consuming too much of his life, whether the cost was outweighing the benefit, and yet even in that doubt, he felt a steadiness that had been absent before, a sense that whatever the outcome, he was no longer merely reacting but choosing. That evening, tenants gathered informally in the courtyard, the atmosphere subdued but supportive, and Raj listened more than he spoke, absorbing stories, concerns, hopes, and he realized that this community, fragile and imperfect, had already altered the dynamic of the building, had introduced a variable Mrs. Crawford could not fully control, and this realization brought a quiet satisfaction, because it meant that the escalation, however stressful, was not futile. As night fell and people drifted back to their apartments, Raj lingered, looking up at the building's facade, thinking about how power thrived in silence and fragmentation, and how even modest acts of connection could disrupt it, and he felt a cautious optimism take root, tempered by realism, because he knew that escalation often preceded resolution, and resolution rarely arrived without cost. Returning to his apartment, Raj prepared for bed, his mind still racing, but beneath the anxiety there was a deeper calm, the calm of someone who had confronted a long-avoided pattern and chosen to engage rather than retreat, and as he lay in the dark listening to the familiar sounds of the building, he sensed that the next phase of this conflict would demand not just endurance but strategy, not just courage but cooperation, and he wondered how far Mrs. Crawford would go to maintain control, and how far he, and the others, were willing to go to reclaim a sense of home that had been denied for too long. By the 6th week, the building no longer felt like a neutral structure of concrete and aging pipes but like a living map of tension, every crack in the walls and uneven step in the stairwell mirroring the fractures that had opened between Mrs. Evelyn Crawford and the people who lived under her authority, and Raj Henderson sensed these fault lines constantly, even when nothing overt happened, because conflict, he had learned, did not require noise to exist, it thrived just as effectively in anticipation, in withheld glances, in conversations paused mid-sentence. The re-inspection had left him drained but alert, and in the days that followed, he moved through his routines with a heightened awareness that bordered on vigilance, not because he expected immediate retaliation but because experience had taught him that escalation often came disguised as normalcy. Mrs. Crawford reduced her visible presence, no longer lingering in hallways or appearing unannounced, and this withdrawal unsettled Raj more than her earlier intrusions, because it suggested calculation rather than retreat, a reassessment of tactics rather than surrender. Tenants noticed it too, whispering about the sudden quiet, about how the landlady now communicated almost exclusively through posted notices and carefully worded emails, and Raj understood that this shift was strategic, an attempt to restore authority by formalizing it, by stripping interactions of the human friction that allowed resistance to find cracks. At the same time, small problems in the building began to go unresolved, a broken washing machine left unrepaired for days, a flickering hallway light ignored despite repeated requests, and these omissions felt deliberate, subtle reminders of dependence, because inconvenience, when applied unevenly, was another form of leverage. Raj fielded complaints, listened patiently, encouraged documentation, and tried to temper expectations, because he knew that frustration without direction could easily turn inward, dissolving the fragile solidarity that had begun to form. Dwayne remained a constant presence, oscillating between humor and frustration, and one night over takeout containers spread across Raj's kitchen table, he voiced a fear he had been carrying quietly, admitting that if things worsened, he might leave voluntarily, not because he believed Mrs. Crawford was right, but because he was tired of living under threat, and Raj felt a pang of guilt at this admission, because he wondered whether his own resolve was inadvertently increasing the pressure on others. They talked honestly, weighing the cost of staying versus leaving, and Raj did not try to persuade Dwayne either way, because he understood that resistance was not a moral obligation but a personal calculation shaped by circumstance, and this understanding softened his own internal rigidity, reminding him that solidarity did not require uniform sacrifice. Meanwhile, the involvement of the housing advocacy group moved forward slowly, bureaucratically, and Raj learned firsthand how systems designed to protect often moved at a pace mismatched to the urgency of lived experience, because emails went unanswered for days, appointments were tentative, and every step required patience, yet even this slow progress provided a psychological anchor, a sense that the conflict existed beyond the building, that it was not merely a private drama but part of a larger structure of tenant-landlord relations. Mrs. Crawford, perhaps sensing this external attention, sent out a formal communication emphasizing her compliance with all applicable laws, outlining her rights as property owner, and warning against defamation and harassment, and the tone of the message was cold, almost legalistic, and Raj recognized it as an attempt to reframe herself as the vulnerable party, to invert the narrative before it could solidify against her. This reframing unsettled some tenants, who worried about legal repercussions, and Raj spent hours talking people through their fears, clarifying distinctions, reminding them that asking for transparency was not harassment, that documentation was protection, but even as he spoke, he felt the strain of carrying this role, because reassurance required confidence, and confidence was difficult to sustain under prolonged uncertainty. At work, Raj's performance wavered, not dramatically enough to invite reprimand but subtly enough to draw concern, and he found himself staying late, overcompensating, driven by a need to prove reliability in a world where stability felt increasingly fragile. One afternoon, while organizing supplies in a storage room, Raj caught himself staring blankly at a stack of boxes, his thoughts looping around worst-case scenarios, eviction notices, strained friendships, and he realized with a start that the conflict had begun to colonize his inner life, narrowing his focus, and this realization alarmed him, because he had not set out to replace one form of constraint with another. That evening, he took a long walk through the neighborhood, letting the city's noise and movement pull him outward, reminding him that the building was not the entirety of his existence, and as he walked, he reflected on how easily righteous struggle could become all-consuming, how important it was to retain a sense of proportion, to protect the parts of himself that were not defined by opposition. When he returned home, he found a new notice posted near the mailboxes announcing a scheduled plumbing repair that would require water shut off during business hours, a minor inconvenience on its own, but the timing and lack of consultation sparked irritation among tenants, especially those who worked from home or cared for children, and Raj noticed how quickly frustration spread, how easily inconvenience became fuel for resentment. He encouraged people to communicate specific needs in writing, to request accommodations, and although responses were delayed, some adjustments were made, and this partial concession, however small, reinforced the idea that pressure, when applied collectively and calmly, could yield results. Mrs. Crawford's demeanor during this period remained distant but controlled, and when Raj encountered her briefly in the hallway, their exchange was polite, almost cordial, and this surface normalcy unsettled him more than open hostility, because it suggested that she was waiting, choosing her moment carefully. That moment arrived in the form of a letter addressed not to individuals but to concerned tenants, informing them that due to ongoing issues, she was considering implementing stricter enforcement measures, including revised guest policies and additional inspections, and the letter framed these changes as necessary to preserve order, implicitly blaming tenant behavior for the escalation. The letter landed like a spark in dry grass, reigniting anxiety and anger, and Raj found himself once again at the center of conversations, parsing language, advising caution, reminding people that policy changes required notice and justification, and yet he could feel the emotional temperature rising, the potential for fracture within the group if fear overtook resolve. During one late-night conversation in the courtyard, a tenant Raj barely knew asked him directly whether he thought Mrs. Crawford was trying to force people out, and Raj hesitated before answering honestly, saying that he did not know her ultimate intention but that the pattern suggested an attempt to reassert control through pressure, and speaking these words aloud made them feel more real, more consequential. The possibility that the conflict could end not in compromise but in displacement weighed heavily on him, and he wrestled with the ethical complexity of encouraging collective action when the risks were unevenly distributed, because not everyone had the same capacity to absorb loss. These doubts crystallized one morning when Raj received a call from the advocacy group confirming that they would conduct an initial assessment of the building, a development that brought relief but also fear, because it represented a point of no return, a moment when the conflict would move beyond internal dynamics and into formal scrutiny. Raj informed the tenants cautiously, emphasizing choice, not obligation, and watched as reactions ranged from gratitude to apprehension, and he respected each response, because he knew that empowerment meant honoring autonomy, not pressuring conformity. Mrs. Crawford was informed shortly thereafter, and her reaction was swift but measured, sending a brief acknowledgement asserting her cooperation and reiterating her adherence to regulations, and the brevity of her response spoke volumes, because it signaled confidence or calculation, or perhaps both. In the days leading up to the assessment, the building buzzed with nervous energy, people cleaning obsessively, rehearsing statements, second-guessing participation, and Raj did his best to provide calm, reminding everyone that the goal was not to attack but to clarify, not to punish but to improve conditions, and repeating these intentions helped him anchor himself as well, because he needed to believe that this effort had a constructive purpose beyond confrontation. Dwayne, watching Raj closely, voiced concern about his exhaustion, suggesting that he step back, that he did not need to carry everything, and Raj appreciated the reminder, realizing that leadership, even informal, required sustainability, not martyrdom. On the eve of the assessment, Raj sat alone in his apartment, the lights dim, listening to the familiar hum of the refrigerator and the distant sounds of the city, and he reflected on how a simple decision to ask a question had set off a chain of events that reshaped his daily life, revealing fault lines not just in the building but within himself, between his desire for peace and his need for integrity. He acknowledged his fear openly, not trying to banish it, recognizing that courage was not the absence of fear but the choice to act alongside it, and this acceptance brought a measure of calm. As he prepared for bed, Raj understood that whatever happened next, the conflict had already altered him, had expanded his sense of agency and connection, and that even if the outcome proved unfavorable, he would carry forward a deeper awareness of his capacity to engage rather than endure. The building settled around him, its familiar sounds layered with new significance, and Raj sensed that the assessment would not bring immediate resolution but would mark a transition, shifting the struggle into a new phase where visibility replaced ambiguity, and as sleep finally claimed him, he wondered not whether the fault lines would widen, but how they would reshape the ground on which all of them stood. The day of the assessment arrived with an almost ceremonial stillness, the kind that settles in before something irrevocable happens, and Raj Henderson woke earlier than usual, his mind already alert, his body tense but steady, because anticipation had replaced fear with a focused resolve that felt unfamiliar yet grounding, and as he moved through his morning routine, he noticed how deliberate his actions had become, how each small choice carried an awareness of consequence, not paralyzing but clarifying. The building itself seemed to sense the significance of the day, quieter than usual, doors closing softly, footsteps measured, as if everyone were unconsciously preparing to be observed, and Raj felt a wave of empathy for the other tenants, each carrying their own mix of hope and anxiety, because assessment, he had learned, was a double-edged thing, promising validation while threatening exposure. When the representatives from the housing advocacy group arrived, two professionals with calm demeanors and neutral expressions, Raj felt a subtle shift in the building's energy, because authority had entered that did not belong to Mrs. Evelyn Crawford, and that alone altered the balance, introducing an external gaze that could not be easily managed or dismissed. Mrs. Crawford greeted them at the entrance with practiced composure, her tone polite, her posture confident, and Raj watched closely, noting how her manner changed slightly, becoming more formal, less personal, as if she were donning a role she knew well, the responsible property owner under scrutiny. The assessment began in common areas, the representatives asking questions, taking notes, observing conditions, and Raj followed at a respectful distance, present but not intrusive, because he understood that his role was not to dominate the process but to support it, to provide context when asked and to ensure that tenants felt safe enough to speak honestly. Conversations unfolded quietly, sometimes awkwardly, as tenants described experiences of unannounced entries, vague notices, selective enforcement, and the representatives listened carefully, asking clarifying questions without judgment, and Raj felt a cautious optimism take root, because being heard, even without immediate resolution, carried its own kind of power. Mrs. Crawford interjected occasionally, offering explanations, framing issues as misunderstandings or isolated incidents, and Raj noted how the representatives acknowledged her perspective while continuing to probe, refusing to let the narrative settle too easily, and this refusal felt significant, because it suggested that complexity would not be smoothed over for the sake of comfort. When the assessment reached Raj's apartment, he felt a brief surge of nervousness, because inviting outsiders into one's personal space always carried vulnerability, but as they stepped inside, he focused on facts, on documentation, on clarity, and the representatives reviewed the notices he had received, the records he had kept, nodding thoughtfully, and one of them remarked on the pattern of vague language. A comment that resonated deeply with Raj because it validated something he had felt intuitively but struggled to articulate. The assessment lasted several hours, moving methodically through the building, and by the end, everyone seemed drained, including Mrs. Crawford, whose composure remained intact but whose eyes betrayed irritation, and Raj sensed that while nothing definitive had occurred yet, the mere presence of external oversight had disrupted the dynamic in a way that could not be undone. After the representatives left, promising a follow-up report and recommendations, the building settled into a strange limbo, the immediate tension diffused but replaced by uncertainty, because now everyone waited, wondering what conclusions would be drawn and how Mrs. Crawford would respond. Raj spent the afternoon fielding questions, offering reassurance where he could, reminding tenants that the process was ongoing, and he felt the familiar pull of responsibility weigh on him again, tempered this time by the knowledge that he was not alone, that the burden was shared, however unevenly. Mrs. Crawford retreated into silence following the assessment, no new notices posted, no emails sent, and this absence felt deliberate, a pause that allowed her to recalibrate, and Raj found this waiting more difficult than open conflict, because ambiguity invited speculation, and speculation fed anxiety. At work, Raj struggled to maintain focus, his thoughts drifting back to the building, to the faces of tenants as they spoke, to the careful neutrality of the representatives, and he reminded himself that meaningful change often moved slowly, that patience was not passivity but endurance. That evening, Dwayne suggested they step away from the building for a few hours, to reclaim some sense of normalcy, and they drove to the coast, sitting on a cold beach watching the waves crash rhythmically, and Raj felt something inside him loosen, the constant vigilance giving way to perspective, because the ocean had a way of shrinking human conflicts without invalidating them, reminding him that life extended beyond walls and leases. They talked about the past, about mistakes and missed opportunities, about how differently they might have handled things if they were younger, and Raj realized that this conflict had forced him into a version of himself he had never fully inhabited before, one that accepted uncertainty without retreat, one that recognized his own voice as something worth hearing. When they returned late that night, the building was quiet, lights dimmed, and Raj felt a flicker of hope that perhaps the worst had passed, that visibility had tempered excess, but experience cautioned him against premature optimism. The days that followed were marked by subtle shifts, Mrs. Crawford addressing maintenance issues more promptly, communicating through formal channels rather than hallway confrontations, and while these changes were modest, they signaled responsiveness, however reluctant, and Raj noted them carefully, aware that progress often arrived incrementally. The advocacy group sent a preliminary summary, outlining concerns and recommendations, emphasizing the need for clearer communication, proper notice, and consistent enforcement, and Raj shared this cautiously with tenants, framing it as a step rather than a conclusion, and the response was a mix of relief and skepticism, because trust, once eroded, did not rebuild quickly. Mrs. Crawford responded to the summary with a carefully worded message acknowledging the recommendations and expressing willingness to review policies, and Raj recognized this as a strategic concession, enough to demonstrate cooperation without admitting fault, and he understood that such partial shifts were often the currency of negotiated peace. Yet beneath the surface, tensions remained, because authority rarely relinquished ground without seeking compensation elsewhere, and Raj sensed that Mrs. Crawford was adjusting her approach rather than abandoning her need for control. This intuition proved prescient when new policies were introduced, clearer in language but stricter in scope, and while some tenants welcomed the clarity, others bristled at the increased regulation, and Raj found himself navigating renewed debate, balancing appreciation for transparency with concern about overreach. He encouraged dialogue, urged tenants to respond collectively and constructively, and reminded them that engagement did not end with assessment, that vigilance was an ongoing practice, and this sustained involvement tested his endurance, because activism, even at a local scale, demanded energy that was difficult to replenish under constant strain. One afternoon, Raj received a call from his supervisor expressing concern about his workload, suggesting he take some time off, and Raj hesitated before accepting, realizing that rest was not a luxury but a necessity if he was to continue supporting others without sacrificing himself. During his brief break, Raj stepped back intentionally, limiting involvement, trusting others to carry conversations forward, and this distance allowed him to see the situation more clearly, to recognize both progress and remaining risk, and to acknowledge his own limits without guilt. When he returned to the building after a day away, he noticed subtle changes, tenants greeting one another more openly, small exchanges of kindness, a sense of community that persisted even as conflict simmered, and Raj felt a quiet pride, not in himself alone but in the collective effort that had made such connection possible. Mrs. Crawford remained distant but civil, and while their interactions were still charged with unspoken history, they were no longer openly adversarial, and Raj recognized this as an uneasy truce, one that required maintenance and awareness. As weeks passed, the initial crisis receded into a sustained negotiation, less dramatic but no less significant, and Raj reflected on how the assessment had functioned less as a solution and more as a mirror, reflecting dynamics that could no longer be ignored. One evening, as Raj sat in his apartment, reviewing notes, he realized that the building's story had become intertwined with his own in ways he had not anticipated, that the question, "What's happening now?" had transformed from casual curiosity into an ethical inquiry, one that demanded ongoing attention and choice. He thought about Mrs. Crawford not simply as an antagonist but as a person shaped by her own fears and losses, her husband's absence perhaps intensifying her need for control, and while this empathy did not excuse her actions, it complicated Raj's understanding, reminding him that power and insecurity often coexisted uncomfortably. This complexity did not resolve the conflict, but it reframed it, allowing Raj to engage without dehumanization, and he sensed that this perspective would be essential in whatever came next. As he prepared for bed, the building settling around him in familiar rhythms, Raj acknowledged both exhaustion and growth, recognizing that the assessment marked not an end but a turning point, a shift from reactive struggle to sustained negotiation, and he wondered how long this balance could hold, what new challenges would emerge, and whether the fragile gains they had made would endure under pressure. The question lingered, unresolved but no longer paralyzing, because Raj had learned that uncertainty was not something to escape but something to navigate, and as sleep overtook him, he carried with him a cautious confidence, rooted not in guaranteed outcomes but in the knowledge that he could face what came next without surrendering his voice. The weeks following the assessment unfolded with a deceptive sense of normalcy, the kind that lulled the senses while quietly rearranging the rules beneath everyone's feet, and Raj Henderson felt this shift acutely, because he had learned by now that calm was not the absence of conflict but its reconfiguration, a movement from open tension into subtler negotiations where meaning hid between lines of emails and the timing of repairs. Mrs. Evelyn Crawford maintained her civil distance, communicating primarily through written notices and carefully phrased updates, and while this new restraint reduced daily friction, it also introduced a colder, more procedural atmosphere, one that replaced personal confrontation with bureaucratic weight, and Raj sensed that this was her way of regaining control without appearing combative, a strategic evolution rather than a retreat. Tenants responded unevenly, some relieved by the reduction in direct scrutiny, others unsettled by the tightening of clearly articulated but rigid policies, and Raj found himself navigating a more complex emotional landscape, because clarity, while preferable to ambiguity, also stripped away the flexibility that people had relied on to manage their lives quietly. The courtyard gatherings became less frequent, not out of fear but fatigue, and Raj recognized this as a critical juncture, because sustained engagement required renewal, and without it, the fragile sense of community risked dissolving back into parallel isolation. At the same time, small victories emerged, maintenance requests handled promptly, notices issued with proper lead time, and these incremental changes created a quiet undercurrent of validation, evidence that pressure had not been in vain, and yet Raj remained wary, because systems rarely reformed without compensatory mechanisms elsewhere. His caution proved justified when Mrs. Crawford introduced a revised guest policy, explicit and comprehensive, limiting overnight stays and requiring prior notification, and although the policy complied with local regulations, its strictness felt punitive, a way of reclaiming authority through legality rather than intimidation. The announcement sparked renewed debate among tenants, some arguing that clarity was preferable to unpredictability, others feeling that the policy intruded excessively into personal lives, and Raj listened carefully, aware that consensus was neither possible nor necessary, but that the manner of response would shape future dynamics. He encouraged tenants to respond individually if affected, to articulate specific concerns rather than generalized frustration, and this approach diffused some tension, because it transformed collective outrage into focused dialogue, though it also highlighted disparities in impact, because rules never landed evenly across lives shaped by different needs and vulnerabilities. Dwayne, whose presence in the building had always existed in a gray zone, felt the policy keenly, and one night he admitted to Raj that he was seriously considering leaving, not out of defeat but exhaustion, because living under constant calculation had begun to erode his sense of self, and Raj felt a complex mix of sadness and understanding, recognizing that resistance without sustainability could become another form of confinement. They talked late into the night about thresholds, about knowing when to push and when to step away, and Raj did not try to persuade Dwayne otherwise, because he had learned that solidarity was not measured by uniform outcomes but by mutual respect for choice. Meanwhile, Raj's own internal landscape shifted in quieter ways, the intensity of the conflict giving way to reflection, and he began to notice how the building's drama had forced him to renegotiate his relationship with stability, because he no longer equated peace with silence or safety with compliance, and this recalibration extended into other areas of his life. At work, he spoke more openly, advocated more confidently, and while this occasionally generated friction, it also brought a sense of alignment he had not realized he lacked, because he was no longer compartmentalizing his voice, no longer shrinking himself selectively to maintain comfort. Yet this expansion came at a cost, because increased engagement required energy, and Raj felt the beginnings of burnout, a dull fatigue that no amount of sleep seemed to fully erase, and he realized that endurance without replenishment was unsustainable. In response, he began to set boundaries, declining some conversations, redirecting others, trusting that the community he helped foster could sustain itself without constant intervention, and this act of stepping back felt both necessary and difficult, because it challenged his growing identification with the role he had assumed. Mrs. Crawford, perhaps sensing this recalibration, initiated a brief, formal check-in with tenants, inviting feedback on the new policies, and Raj recognized this as a strategic move, an attempt to demonstrate responsiveness while retaining control over the process, and he advised tenants to engage thoughtfully, to document responses, and to frame concerns constructively, because he understood now that tone influenced outcome as much as content. The feedback process yielded modest adjustments, minor concessions that signaled acknowledgement without fundamentally altering the power structure, and Raj viewed these changes with measured realism, appreciating progress without mistaking it for transformation. As summer edged closer, the building settled into a new rhythm, less volatile but no less complex, and Raj noticed how conflict had reshaped relationships, deepening some connections while thinning others, because shared struggle revealed compatibility as much as solidarity. He spent more time alone, not out of withdrawal but integration, processing what the past months had uncovered about his own patterns, his tolerance for discomfort, his capacity for leadership, and the quiet satisfaction he felt in having confronted rather than avoided a defining challenge. One afternoon, Raj encountered Mrs. Crawford in the hallway, their exchange polite, almost neutral, and in that brief interaction he sensed a subtle shift, not warmth but recognition, as if she now regarded him less as a problem and more as a factor to be accounted for, and this reframing felt significant, because it suggested that power, when contested, adapted rather than vanished. This recognition did not absolve her behavior or erase past tension, but it altered the terms of engagement, and Raj understood that his presence in the building had irrevocably changed the dynamic, regardless of future outcomes. Dwayne's departure, when it came, was quiet and unceremonious, his friend's lease adjusted, his belongings loaded into a borrowed car, and Raj felt the loss keenly, because Dwayne had been both anchor and mirror throughout the conflict, and his absence underscored the uneven toll of resistance, reminding Raj that victories were often partial and paid for unevenly. They said goodbye without drama, promising to stay in touch, and as Raj watched the car pull away, he felt a swell of grief mixed with pride, because Dwayne had chosen self-preservation without surrender, and Raj respected that deeply. In the days that followed, Raj grappled with a sense of anticlimax, the realization that sustained conflict rarely ended with clear resolution, more often dissolving into altered conditions that required ongoing navigation, and he found this ambiguity harder to integrate than open struggle, because it lacked narrative closure. Yet within this ambiguity, Raj identified a deeper shift, an internal reorientation that did not depend on external validation, because he had proven to himself that he could endure discomfort without disappearing, that he could assert boundaries without becoming hardened, and this knowledge settled into him quietly, reshaping his sense of possibility. As the building moved forward under its revised order, Raj continued to observe, to engage selectively, and to live his life with greater intentionality, recognizing that home was not defined solely by walls or leases but by the degree to which one could inhabit space without apology. The landlady remained, authority intact but constrained, the tenants persisted, adapted, and in some cases moved on, and Raj accepted this impermanence as part of the terrain, understanding that stability was not a fixed state but an ongoing negotiation. One evening, sitting alone in his apartment with the windows open, city sounds drifting in, Raj reflected on how the conflict had begun with irritation and evolved into inquiry, forcing him to ask not just what was happening now but why it mattered, and he realized that the true shift had occurred within him, a quiet expansion of agency that would not recede simply because circumstances calmed. The building, with its old walls and thin boundaries, continued to house stories of compromise and confrontation, and Raj knew that future tensions would arise, because power never slept, it only waited, but he also knew that he would meet them differently now, not as a man seeking to avoid disruption but as one willing to engage with it thoughtfully. As night settled in and the building's familiar sounds resumed their steady cadence, Raj felt neither triumphant nor defeated but grounded, aware that the ground beneath him had shifted, subtly but permanently, and that whatever came next would unfold on terrain he now understood with greater clarity and self-respect. Autumn arrived without ceremony, the kind that slipped into the building through cooler mornings and earlier shadows rather than bold declarations, and Raj Henderson felt its presence less in temperature than in tempo, because the rhythm of life inside the apartment complex had changed in ways that could not be undone, settling into patterns shaped by memory as much as by policy. And as he moved through his days he became increasingly aware that what lingered after conflict was not tension but awareness, a heightened sensitivity to tone, timing, and intention that made every interaction feel layered. The landlady's authority, once monolithic and unquestioned, now existed alongside a collective consciousness that had learned how to observe, document, and quietly respond, and this coexistence produced an uneasy equilibrium that required constant adjustment, like walking on ground that looked solid but shifted subtly underfoot. Raj noticed it in the way tenants read notices more carefully, discussed implications before reacting, and weighed personal cost against collective principle, because the months of friction had taught them that power rarely announced itself loudly, more often embedding itself in procedures and expectations that felt neutral but carried consequences. Mrs. Crawford herself seemed altered by this new environment, her presence less theatrical, her interventions more calibrated, and Raj suspected that she too had learned from the resistance, refining her methods rather than abandoning her instincts, because people who relied on control seldom relinquished it entirely, they adapted. This mutual adaptation created a peculiar calm, one that felt earned but fragile, and Raj understood that it depended as much on restraint as on assertion, because escalation would benefit no one now. Yet beneath this surface stability, unresolved issues persisted, most notably around long-term maintenance and rent adjustments, topics Mrs. Crawford had deferred during the period of heightened scrutiny, and as whispers of upcoming changes circulated, Raj sensed a familiar tightening in his chest, because deferral was often a precursor to unilateral action. The rumors proved accurate when a notice appeared announcing planned renovations that would require temporary displacement for some tenants, framed as improvements but conspicuously vague about timelines and accommodations, and Raj recognized the strategy immediately, because ambiguity shifted the burden of uncertainty onto those least equipped to bear it. The building buzzed with anxiety, conversations erupting in hallways and on stairwells, and Raj felt the old pull to intervene, to organize, to translate fear into action, but this time he paused, because he had learned that leadership did not always mean stepping forward first, sometimes it meant creating space for others to articulate their needs. When tenants approached him for guidance, he asked questions rather than issuing advice, helping them clarify their concerns and encouraging them to seek specifics in writing, and this approach redistributed agency, fostering a more resilient form of engagement that did not hinge solely on his involvement. Mrs. Crawford responded predictably, providing partial answers, emphasizing compliance with regulations, and asserting that inconvenience was an unavoidable aspect of improvement. And while her tone remained professional, Raj detected an undercurrent of challenge, as if she were testing how much leverage she could reclaim without provoking organized opposition. This time, however, the tenant's response was measured and coordinated, requests for clarification sent individually but echoing similar points, and Raj observed with quiet satisfaction how collective pressure could be exerted without spectacle, because the lessons of the past months had been absorbed deeply. Still, the stress took its toll, particularly on older tenants and those with limited resources, and Raj found himself accompanying neighbors to appointments, helping interpret notices, and offering emotional support, roles that extended beyond activism into care, and this expansion of responsibility forced him to confront the limits of his capacity, because caring deeply did not grant immunity from exhaustion. He began to experience moments of resentment, flashes of irritation when new problems surfaced just as old ones seemed to settle, and he grappled with guilt over these feelings, because he believed that empathy should be inexhaustible, yet he was learning that sustainability required honesty about fatigue. To manage this tension, Raj returned to routines that grounded him: long walks after work, cooking meals with intention, reconnecting with friends outside the building, and these acts of self-maintenance felt not indulgent but necessary, because they restored a sense of proportion, reminding him that while the building mattered, it was not the entirety of his life. Meanwhile, the renovations proceeded unevenly, delays compounding stress, and Mrs. Crawford's communications grew more defensive, as if the weight of logistics and scrutiny had sharpened her edges, and Raj sensed that her patience was thinning, because control was most threatened when plans unraveled despite authority. A particularly tense moment arose when a tenant's temporary relocation was mishandled, resulting in lost belongings, and the incident reignited anger that had been simmering beneath the surface, and Raj watched closely as tenants debated how to respond, some calling for formal complaints, others urging caution, because they feared retaliation. The debate itself felt like progress, because it demonstrated an ability to weigh options collectively rather than defaulting to silence, and Raj contributed by outlining possible avenues without prescribing a single course, because he understood now that empowerment came from informed choice, not directive leadership. Mrs. Crawford eventually addressed the incident publicly, issuing a formal apology that was careful but sincere enough to diffuse immediate outrage, and Raj recognized this as a significant moment, because acknowledgement, however constrained, marked a departure from her earlier refusal to concede error, and he wondered whether this change reflected genuine learning or strategic necessity, or perhaps an uncomfortable blend of both. As the weeks passed, Raj became increasingly aware of how the conflict had altered his perception of authority beyond the building, sharpening his skepticism toward systems that relied on compliance without transparency, and this awareness influenced his interactions at work and in civic spaces, where he now asked questions he might once have swallowed, not aggressively but persistently. And while this occasionally earned him the label of being difficult, it also brought unexpected allies who appreciated his clarity. Yet this expanded sense of agency also exposed him to disappointment, because not all systems responded to reasoned challenge, and Raj had to learn how to disengage without becoming cynical, a balance that required ongoing recalibration. Back at the building, the renovations neared completion, leaving behind improved facilities but also residual bitterness, because not all losses could be offset by upgrades, and Raj observed how material improvements did not automatically heal relational fractures, because trust, once strained, required deliberate repair. Mrs. Crawford attempted to foster goodwill by hosting a small open house to showcase the renovations, complete with refreshments and scripted enthusiasm, and while some tenants appreciated the gesture, others viewed it with suspicion, and Raj attended with cautious openness, recognizing that gestures, even imperfect ones, could serve as openings rather than endpoints. During the event, he found himself in an unexpected conversation with Mrs. Crawford, one that moved beyond logistics into something approaching candor, as she spoke of the pressures of management, of balancing budgets and expectations, and while Raj did not excuse her past behavior, he listened, because he understood that complexity did not negate accountability but contextualized it. Their exchange was brief and restrained, but it marked another line crossed, another layer added to their dynamic, because they were no longer simply adversaries or roles but individuals negotiating overlapping interests within a constrained system. After the open house, life resumed its quieter cadence, and Raj felt a subtle sense of closure, not because everything was resolved but because the conflict had reached a plateau where change was incremental rather than explosive, and he recognized this as a natural phase, one that required patience rather than urgency. Yet even in this relative calm, Raj sensed that certain lines could not be unseen, that once awareness had been sharpened, it did not dull easily, and he noticed how tenants continued to share information, how vigilance had become habitual rather than reactive, and this sustained attentiveness felt like a quiet victory, because it suggested resilience beyond any single issue. Raj himself felt changed in ways that extended beyond the building, more attuned to his own boundaries, more willing to articulate needs, and more comfortable with the discomfort that accompanied honesty, and this internal shift felt durable, because it was grounded not in opposition but in self-respect. Still, he remained mindful of the cost, of friendships strained, of energy expended, and he accepted these as part of the terrain, because meaningful engagement rarely came without sacrifice. As winter approached and the days shortened, Raj spent more evenings at home, reflecting on how the building had become a crucible for growth he had not anticipated, a place where everyday interactions revealed deeper truths about power, community, and personal agency, and he realized that what had begun as irritation had evolved into a redefinition of how he inhabited space, both physical and psychological. The landlady remained a presence, authority intact but tempered, the tenants persisted, watchful and adaptive, and Raj understood that this equilibrium was provisional, because circumstances would change again, new pressures would arise, and the lines they had drawn would be tested. Yet he also knew that whatever came next, he would meet it with a clarity earned through experience, aware of both his capacity and his limits, and this knowledge felt like a form of stability that no lease clause could guarantee. One night, standing by his window and watching the lights across the courtyard flicker on one by one, Raj felt a quiet gratitude for the lessons embedded in conflict, for the way challenge had sharpened his sense of self without erasing his empathy, and he recognized that the most enduring change had occurred not in policies or procedures but in perception, because once you learned to see power clearly, you could not unsee it, and that awareness, while sometimes heavy, was also liberating. The building settled into its winter hush, the sounds muted, the tension subdued but not forgotten, and Raj knew that the story unfolding within its walls was far from over, because stability was always temporary, but he felt ready for whatever chapter followed, grounded in the understanding that lines, once crossed, reshaped the landscape permanently, and that navigating this terrain required not constant resistance but sustained presence. Winter pressed itself firmly into the building, not violently but persistently, the kind of cold that seeped into corners and stayed there, and Raj Henderson felt its presence as much internally as externally, because the season slowed everything down, conversations growing shorter, hallways quieter, conflicts less visible but no less real. And in this deceleration he began to sense what remained after the noise of confrontation faded, what lingered when urgency gave way to routine. The renovations were officially complete, the paperwork finalized, the temporary relocations resolved on paper if not entirely in memory, and the building settled into a version of stability that felt carefully assembled, like something held together by agreement rather than trust. Mrs. Crawford resumed her predictable patterns, notices appearing at regular intervals, inspections scheduled well in advance, her language precise and neutral, and while the sharp edge of her authority had dulled, it had not disappeared, instead becoming more procedural, less personal, as if she had learned that overt control invited resistance, whereas structure cloaked in professionalism was harder to challenge. Raj noticed how tenants responded to this new normal with a mixture of relief and vigilance, grateful for the absence of daily friction yet unwilling to return fully to passivity, because memory, once activated, resisted erasure. Small habits persisted, neighbors forwarding emails to one another, quietly checking interpretations of lease language, discussing options before responding, and Raj recognized these behaviors as the true residue of the conflict, evidence that something fundamental had shifted beneath the surface even if the outward appearance suggested calm. For Raj himself, the quiet was disorienting at first, because he had grown accustomed to intensity, to being needed, to measuring days by urgency rather than intention, and without that constant pull, he found himself confronting a different kind of challenge, the task of integrating what he had learned into a life no longer organized around resistance. He felt moments of restlessness, a vague sense of anticlimax, as if he had braced for an ending that never quite arrived, and this feeling forced him to examine how much of his identity had temporarily fused with the role he had assumed, the advocate, the organizer, the one who spoke when others hesitated. Letting go of that role did not mean abandoning the values it represented, but it did require trust that the community could function without his constant involvement, trust that awareness would persist even in his absence, and perhaps most difficult of all, trust that he himself did not need conflict to feel purposeful. At work, this integration unfolded unevenly, because Raj's sharpened sense of agency sometimes clashed with institutional inertia, and he found himself navigating familiar patterns of pushback and accommodation, though now with greater self-awareness, noticing when to persist and when to disengage without resentment. He began mentoring a younger colleague, someone who reminded him of his own earlier caution, and through these conversations Raj recognized how much he had changed, how his advice now emphasized clarity over approval, sustainability over martyrdom, and this realization grounded him, because it demonstrated that growth did not require constant testing to remain valid. Back at the building, winter intensified the practical realities of shared space, heating issues, icy walkways, and the inevitable frustrations that arose when systems strained under environmental pressure, and Raj observed how these smaller challenges were handled differently now, tenants quicker to communicate, management more responsive, and while not every issue was resolved smoothly, the process felt less adversarial, more collaborative, and Raj attributed this not to goodwill alone but to the established expectation of accountability. Mrs. Crawford herself appeared more reserved, her interactions efficient, her presence less theatrical, and Raj wondered privately whether the past months had taken a toll on her as well, because authority, when challenged, demanded adaptation, and adaptation was rarely comfortable. Their interactions remained polite and limited, but occasionally, in brief exchanges, Raj sensed a muted respect, not warmth, but acknowledgement, as if she now regarded him not as a problem to be managed but as a constant within the system, someone whose responses were predictable in their insistence on clarity. This reframing altered the power dynamic subtly, because predictability, when grounded in principle rather than fear, could itself become a stabilizing force. As the holidays approached, the building took on a subdued festive air, minimal decorations, soft lights in windows, and Raj felt a familiar mixture of nostalgia and melancholy, because the season had a way of amplifying reflection, drawing attention to absences as much as presences. Dwayne's absence remained palpable, his old laughter echoing faintly in memory, and Raj felt the weight of choices made for survival rather than triumph, understanding more deeply now that resistance did not always produce visible victory. Sometimes it simply clarified paths forward, even when those paths diverged. They stayed in touch sporadically, exchanging messages about work and life, and Raj respected the distance that had naturally grown between them, because continuity did not require proximity to remain meaningful. The building hosted a modest holiday gathering organized by tenants rather than management, informal and unstructured, and Raj attended briefly, appreciating the ease of it, the absence of speeches or agendas, because it represented something genuine, a quiet assertion of community that did not rely on permission. Mrs. Crawford did not attend, a detail noted but not remarked upon, and Raj recognized this absence as symbolic, not antagonistic but indicative of boundaries newly understood on both sides. As winter deepened, Raj found himself spending more time alone, reading, writing, thinking, and these solitary moments allowed him to process the emotional residue of the conflict, the anger he had suppressed, the fear he had rationalized, the pride he had tempered, and he realized that confronting authority had forced him to confront himself with equal intensity. He acknowledged the moments when he had overextended, when his need to help had bordered on control, when he had derived too much identity from being the one who stood firm, and this honesty did not diminish his actions but contextualized them, making space for a more balanced self-understanding. He also recognized the moments when he had almost retreated, when fear had whispered that silence was safer, and honoring those moments reminded him that courage was not the absence of fear but the choice to act despite it, a lesson that felt less dramatic now but more deeply ingrained. The building weathered a particularly harsh storm in late winter, power flickering briefly before stabilizing, pipes groaning under pressure, and in that shared vulnerability Raj saw how crisis, even minor, revealed the quality of systems and relationships, because response mattered more than disruption itself. Tenants checked on one another, management communicated promptly, and while inconvenience was unavoidable, the experience felt contained rather than chaotic, and Raj took quiet note of this, because it suggested that some lessons had translated into practice. Mrs. Crawford issued a follow-up communication thanking tenants for cooperation, the language measured but sincere enough, and Raj allowed himself a small moment of acknowledgement, not triumph, but recognition that change, however incremental, had occurred. As the season edged toward its end, Raj felt a growing readiness for what came next, not in the sense of anticipation but preparedness, because he understood now that life's conflicts rarely announced themselves clearly, they emerged through accumulation, through moments that demanded response rather than reaction. The building had been a training ground of sorts, a contained environment where stakes were high but manageable, and the skills he had honed there, patience, documentation, articulation, boundary setting, would extend into future arenas, whether he sought them or not. He reflected often on the title he had come to associate with Mrs. Crawford in his mind, the landlady, not as an individual alone but as a symbol of institutional authority that shaped daily life quietly yet profoundly, and he realized that his journey had not been about opposing her personally but about renegotiating his relationship with systems that governed him, learning when to comply, when to question, and when to walk away. This reframing brought a sense of peace that felt earned rather than imposed, because it was rooted in understanding rather than avoidance. On a particularly clear winter night, Raj stood at his window again, watching snow fall softly into the courtyard, the lights casting long shadows across the ground, and he felt a calm that did not depend on certainty, because he knew now that stability was provisional by nature, but agency was internal. The building, with all its histories and compromises, remained imperfect, but Raj no longer felt diminished within it, because he had learned how to occupy space deliberately, how to remain present without surrendering himself. He understood that future challenges would arise, perhaps here, perhaps elsewhere, and that not every battle would be worth fighting, but he trusted his capacity to discern the difference, a trust forged through experience rather than theory. As winter prepared to loosen its grip and the promise of another season hovered just beyond reach, Raj felt grounded in what remained after the noise, the quiet confidence that came from having spoken, listened, acted, and reflected, and he recognized that this internal steadiness was the most lasting outcome of the conflict, because it could not be revoked by notices or policies. The landlady remained, the tenants endured, life continued in its uneven rhythm, and Raj accepted this continuity without resignation, because he had learned that meaningful change did not always announce itself dramatically, sometimes it settled quietly, shaping perception, guiding choice, and altering how one moved through the world long after the confrontation itself had faded. Spring arrived unevenly, not with celebration but with hesitation, as if the season itself were unsure how welcome it would be after the long winter, and Raj Henderson sensed this ambivalence mirrored in the building, where thawing pipes and longer daylight revealed both relief and residue, the marks left behind by months of quiet negotiation, because nothing that had happened was truly over, it had merely changed form. The courtyard filled again with tentative signs of life, a chair dragged outside for morning coffee, a plant placed near a window, conversations lingering a little longer than they had in the cold months, and Raj observed these details with an attentiveness shaped by experience, aware now that the smallest gestures often carried the deepest meanings. The landlady's presence remained consistent but restrained, her routines predictable, her authority intact yet bounded by expectations she could no longer ignore, and while outward conflict had receded, Raj felt the weight of knowing settle into him, the understanding that awareness, once earned, demanded responsibility, not necessarily action at every moment, but discernment, the ability to recognize when silence was neutral and when it was complicit. This awareness complicated his sense of ease, because comfort now came with conditions, with an ongoing assessment of whether peace was genuine or merely convenient, and Raj found himself navigating this internal tension daily, balancing gratitude for stability with vigilance against complacency. The building itself seemed to test this balance when a minor policy change was introduced, subtle enough to pass unnoticed by many, a revised clause about shared utilities that shifted cost distribution slightly, and Raj caught it immediately, not because it was egregious but because he had learned how such shifts often functioned, incremental adjustments that accumulated impact over time. He raised the issue calmly, first with a few neighbors, then in writing to management, framing his concern not as accusation but as inquiry, and the response was swift and measured, an explanation provided, a concession offered, and while the issue resolved without escalation, Raj felt the familiar mix of satisfaction and fatigue, because even small interventions required energy, and the cumulative cost of attentiveness was not insignificant. He began to reflect more deeply on this cost, on how vigilance, while protective, could also become burdensome if left unchecked, and he wondered how to carry knowledge without being consumed by it, how to remain engaged without living perpetually on alert. These questions extended beyond the building into his broader life, influencing how he consumed news, how he engaged in social conversations, how he evaluated institutions that touched his daily existence, and Raj realized that his internal shift had altered his relationship with uncertainty itself. Because he no longer assumed neutrality, he examined structures with a practiced eye. And while this clarity felt empowering, it also stripped away the innocence of passive trust. At work, this manifested in more deliberate choices about where to invest effort, Raj declining initiatives that lacked transparency, advocating for clearer communication, and mentoring colleagues on how to navigate organizational complexity without burning out. And through these interactions he recognized a quieter form of leadership emerging, one that did not rely on confrontation but on modeling thoughtful engagement. Yet even as he found satisfaction in this role, he remained cautious of becoming defined by it, because he remembered how easily purpose could harden into obligation, and he resisted the impulse to intervene reflexively, allowing others to step forward, to learn, to make mistakes, because empowerment required space as much as guidance. The building continued to function within its altered equilibrium, tenants adapting to revised norms, some moving on, new ones arriving unaware of the history embedded in the walls, and Raj felt a strange tenderness toward these newcomers, recognizing in their tentative optimism a version of himself from before the conflict, and he struggled briefly with the urge to warn them, to share hard-earned lessons prematurely, before realizing that experience could not be transferred wholesale, it had to be lived, and that his role was not to inoculate but to be available if and when questions arose. Mrs. Crawford herself seemed to age slightly in Raj's perception, not physically but symbolically, her authority now contextualized, her decisions understood as products of pressure rather than immutable truths, and this reframing softened Raj's anger without erasing accountability, allowing him to hold a more complex view of her, one that acknowledged harm without reducing her to it. They interacted rarely, but when they did, there was a mutual recognition of boundaries, an unspoken agreement about the parameters of engagement, and Raj understood that while reconciliation was unlikely, coexistence grounded in clarity was possible, and this realization eased a tension he had carried longer than he realized. As spring progressed, Raj faced a personal decision unrelated to the building but shaped by everything he had learned, an opportunity to move to a different neighborhood, a space with more light, fewer shared constraints, and the prospect unsettled him more than he expected, because the building, with all its conflict, had become a site of growth, and leaving it felt less like escape and more like closure, and Raj was not certain he was ready to choose that yet. He weighed the practical benefits against the symbolic significance, questioning whether staying was an act of commitment or inertia, whether leaving would represent progress or avoidance, and these reflections forced him to confront how deeply the experience had woven itself into his sense of self. He discussed the decision with friends, with Dwayne during a long phone call that drifted between memory and speculation, and Dwayne's perspective, shaped by distance, offered clarity, reminding Raj that places served chapters, not entire lives, and that honoring growth sometimes meant allowing it to carry you elsewhere. Still, Raj did not rush the decision, understanding now that timing mattered, that choice made under pressure often replicated old patterns, and he allowed himself the luxury of patience, trusting that clarity would emerge through reflection rather than urgency. Meanwhile, the building presented one final test of his equilibrium, a conflict between tenants over shared space that threatened to escalate, and Raj found himself at a crossroads, aware that stepping in could help but also that stepping back might allow others to resolve it themselves. He chose a middle path, facilitating an initial conversation, then withdrawing, and the outcome, imperfect but workable, affirmed his growing belief that influence did not require constant presence, that sometimes the most sustainable intervention was temporary. This experience reinforced his evolving understanding of power, not as something to be seized or resisted endlessly, but as something negotiated through participation, clarity, and restraint, and Raj felt a quiet confidence settle into him, a sense that he no longer needed to prove his awareness through action alone. As days lengthened and the building filled with the sounds of seasonal transition, Raj reflected on how much of his journey had been internal, how the external conflict had served as catalyst rather than conclusion, forcing him to articulate values he had long held but rarely defended. He acknowledged the moments of fear that had accompanied this articulation, the nights of doubt, the exhaustion, the losses, and he honored them as part of the process, because growth that cost nothing rarely transformed anything. He also recognized the moments of connection, the shared glances, the quiet thank yous, the sense of collective presence that had emerged in response to pressure, and these memories grounded him, reminding him that community, while fragile, could be forged through honesty and care. The weight of knowing, Raj realized, was not simply the burden of awareness, but the responsibility to choose how to live with it, to decide when to act, when to rest, when to speak, and when to listen, and this responsibility, though heavy at times, felt preferable to the ignorance he had once mistaken for peace. As spring settled fully into place, Raj felt neither restless nor resolved, but integrated, aware that the story unfolding within him was ongoing, not bound to a single location or conflict, and that whatever decision he made about staying or leaving, the lessons he had learned would travel with him. The landlady remained a figure in the background of this understanding, not as an antagonist to be defeated but as a reminder of the systems that shaped daily life, systems that demanded engagement rather than avoidance, and Raj felt prepared to meet these systems with a steadiness earned through experience. One evening, as light lingered longer in the courtyard and voices drifted upward from open windows, Raj sat quietly, reflecting on how far he had come from the man who once equated harmony with silence, and he felt a deep, unforced acceptance of complexity, because life, he now understood, did not offer clean resolutions, only ongoing negotiations between self, community, and structure. The weight of knowing remained, but it no longer pressed down on him, it anchored him, providing a point of reference from which to move forward deliberately, and in this anchoring, Raj found a form of freedom that did not depend on victory or retreat, but on clarity, choice, and the willingness to remain present even when certainty was elusive. By the time summer announced itself decisively, with heat that lingered into the night and light that stretched the edges of the day, Raj Henderson understood that endings rarely arrived with the clarity people expected, because what concluded was not the story itself but the urgency of telling it, and this realization framed his final months in the building with a calm attentiveness that surprised even him. The courtyard hummed again with ordinary life, doors opening and closing, footsteps on stairs, snippets of conversation drifting through open windows, and Raj moved through these sounds with a sense of perspective shaped by everything that had come before, aware that familiarity no longer equaled complacency, that he could inhabit routine without surrendering awareness. The landlady's presence remained consistent, her notices predictable, her authority stable yet bounded by expectations she could not fully undo, and Raj accepted this equilibrium not as victory or defeat but as consequence, the natural result of sustained engagement meeting institutional inertia. He noticed how new tenants settled in, unaware of the tensions embedded in the walls, and rather than feeling compelled to instruct or warn them, Raj allowed their innocence to exist, understanding now that growth was not something to impose but something to support when sought, and this restraint felt like a final lesson learned, the difference between vigilance and intrusion. His decision about moving crystallized gradually, not through a dramatic realization but through accumulation, a sense that the building had given him what it could, that remaining longer would risk turning meaning into attachment rather than honoring the chapter for what it was, and when he finally chose to leave, the decision felt neither triumphant nor sorrowful, but right, a quiet alignment between internal readiness and external possibility. He informed Mrs. Crawford formally, the exchange efficient and unremarkable, and he noticed with some irony how anticlimactic the moment felt, given the weight she had once carried in his mind, because authority diminished when stripped of its emotional charge, becoming simply another factor to account for rather than a force to fear. Telling the neighbors unfolded more slowly, conversations unfolding in hallways and on steps, reactions mixed with surprise and understanding, and Raj felt a gentle gratitude for these connections, aware that community, however temporary, left traces that mattered even when proximity ended. He spent his remaining weeks packing deliberately, not rushing, allowing memories to surface without clinging to them, recognizing how much of what he was taking with him was intangible, habits of attention, boundaries learned, a clearer relationship to his own voice. At work, he began transitioning responsibilities, mentoring others more intentionally, and he noticed how natural this felt, because he no longer equated contribution with permanence, understanding that leadership often meant preparing for absence as much as presence. As moving day approached, the building seemed to offer one last reflection of everything it had taught him, a minor dispute flaring briefly over shared resources, resolved not by escalation but by conversation, and Raj observed this from a distance, not intervening, not disengaged, simply trusting the systems of communication that had slowly taken root, and this trust felt like closure, because it confirmed that the change had not depended solely on him. The final encounter with Mrs. Crawford came unexpectedly, a brief exchange in the hallway as Raj carried boxes toward the door, her tone polite, her words acknowledging his tendency with formality rather than sentiment, and Raj responded in kind, feeling no urge to reinterpret the moment, because he no longer needed it to mean more than it did. As he stepped outside for the last time, the building receded behind him without ceremony, and Raj felt no surge of nostalgia or relief, only a steady awareness that the space he was leaving had already been internalized, that its lessons would travel with him into whatever environment came next. Settling into his new place unfolded quietly, fewer shared walls, more light, a different rhythm, and Raj noticed how quickly he adapted, not because the move erased the past but because he had learned how to inhabit space deliberately, how to assess structures without being defined by them. He found himself attentive to patterns immediately, reading leases carefully, noting communication styles, but without suspicion, because discernment had replaced defensiveness, and this distinction mattered, allowing him to engage without bracing for conflict that had not yet appeared. Occasionally, he thought of the building, of Dwayne, of the tenants who remained, and these thoughts carried neither regret nor longing, but a recognition that shared experiences shaped people unevenly, leaving some connections enduring and others contextual, and Raj accepted this variability as part of adult life, where continuity was chosen rather than assumed. He noticed how often the lessons resurfaced in unexpected ways, in conversations with friends, in decisions at work, in moments where silence presented itself as the easier option, and each time, he felt the quiet presence of choice, the understanding that agency did not require confrontation but clarity, and that clarity could be exercised gently or firmly depending on circumstance. Looking back, Raj recognized that the landlady had never been the true center of the story. She had been the catalyst, the figure through which deeper questions had emerged, questions about compliance, fear, community, and self-definition, and it was these questions, rather than any resolution with her, that constituted the narrative's true arc. He no longer framed the experience as a battle won or lost, but as an education endured, one that had demanded patience, resilience, and honesty, and had offered in return a more durable sense of self. In quieter moments, Raj reflected on how easily his life might have continued unchanged had he chosen silence early on, and this thought no longer filled him with regret or pride, but with understanding, because he saw now that people arrived at awareness through different paths and at different times, and that judging one's earlier self by later knowledge was both unfair and unnecessary. What mattered was not the absence of fear but the willingness to engage with it, and Raj felt gratitude for having been forced into that engagement, because comfort had rarely taught him anything he could carry forward. As time passed, the building became less immediate in his memory, its details softening, but the internal shifts remained vivid, shaping how he approached new systems, new authorities, new communities, and he understood that the true inheritance of the experience was not vigilance alone but balance, the ability to remain present without being consumed, to speak without dominating, to listen without disappearing. The landlady, once a looming presence, faded into symbol, a reminder that power was not monolithic but relational, negotiated through daily interactions, and Raj felt prepared to navigate these negotiations wherever they arose, because he no longer mistook structure for destiny. On one particularly warm evening, sitting in his new space with windows open and unfamiliar sounds drifting in, Raj felt a deep sense of coherence, not because life had simplified but because his relationship to complexity had changed, and he realized that the story he had lived was not confined to a single address, it was a rehearsal for everything that followed. The space he carried with him now was internal, a steadiness rooted in self-respect, an understanding of boundaries as dynamic rather than defensive, and a trust in his ability to choose engagement thoughtfully rather than reflexively. This space allowed him to move forward without bitterness, to remember without clinging, to anticipate future challenges without dread, and in this capacity, Raj found a quiet confidence that did not announce itself, because it did not need to. The building continued without him, the landlady maintained her routines, tenants came and went, and Raj accepted this continuity with ease, because he understood now that meaning was not diminished by impermanence, it was shaped by it. What remained, after all the notices, meetings, doubts, and decisions, was not a changed institution but a changed man, someone who no longer equated harmony with silence or stability with surrender, someone who understood that home was not simply where one lived, but how one inhabited space, internally and externally. And as Raj settled fully into this understanding, he recognized that the story had concluded not with resolution but with readiness, a readiness to meet whatever came next with clarity, restraint, and presence, carrying forward the lessons of the landlady not as grievance, but as knowledge, and allowing that knowledge to inform a life lived more deliberately, one space at a time.